Chapter 2707. Arbor couldn't stand Chi Xuanxuan's stench any longer. She hurriedly lowered the curtains and called out, "Let's go, let's go." She looked like she was running away. Ma Ta laughed heartily and teased Qi Xianxian, "You're the one who's leaving." Qi Xianxian snorted when she heard this. "You don't stink. Smell yourself, you stink 100 times more than me. You stinker." Everyone was noisily led by Eunuch Xiao to their respective rooms to bathe and rest. As for Arbor, she sat alone in the carriage and couldn't help but smile faintly when she thought of Xianxian and the others. They'd caused quite a commotion when they'd broken through in the back mountain of the Mu residence. Even old Patriarch Mu had been alerted and had gone to the back mountain to investigate. However, when he found out that a few of his young friends had broken through here, the old man had thoughtfully instructed everyone in the Mu residence not to disturb them. Arbor was happier than anyone that Xianxian and the others had successfully broken through this time. She'd taken a rough look at their cultivation levels just now. Xianxian had already entered the 6th level of the spirit realm. The little fatty, Ma Ta, Lu Yu, and Hua Tao had all entered the 9th level of the spirit realm. Jiang Shaoxin had also successfully reached the 8th level of the spirit realm. Only Duanmu Qing's cultivation level was something she couldn't determine. It was obvious that his cultivation level was now above hers. Arbor felt a bit happy when she thought of being able to gather with her friends again and roam the world together. It would be even better if she could meet up with senior brother Situ and the others one day. Since she had nothing to do, Arbor took out a book of poisons and flipped through it. She leaned against the soft cushions in the carriage and read line by line. Actually, she seemed to have read these books thousands of times. She could clearly remember which herbs were on which page and which line. Arbor thought of yesterday when she thought of this. Qing Niang had mocked and ridiculed her yesterday. The gist of her words was that she didn't understand the business of Precious Painting Workshop. If she took over Precious Painting Workshop, the shop would probably close down in 2 months. It seemed that some rumors had started to spread again. Arbor didn't need to ask around to know that Miss Chen, who she'd met at Precious Painting Workshop yesterday, wouldn't let go of this opportunity to smear her name. However, none of this mattered anymore. To a nouveau riche, whether or not this small precious art workshop could continue to operate stably and whether or not it could make a lot of money was not a big problem. What she wanted to do was to get the item back from Mu Jingfeng. Regardless of whether she could manage it well or not, she just couldn't let Mu Jingfeng benefit from it. The little guy thought for a moment, then used his divine sense to push open the inner world gate, and look through the inner world. Then, he summoned Jing'an's divine sense avatar, who was training his divine sense on its own, into his inner world. After her conscious had evolved, her spiritual sense body had also evolved into a spiritual sense body. Moreover, ever since her inner world had expanded to 500 cubic meters, she had become much more powerful than before. Not only did it contain 3,000 statues, but it was also filled with gold, silver, jewels, and mountains of gold and silver. She let her spiritual consciousness jump in, but there was almost no place to land. Stepping on a pile of gold, silver, pearls, and jades, it made people speechless. Every time she looked at her inner world, she would get a headache. Lately, she had been trying her best not to open her inner world. Now that her conscious had entered the deity realm, she could take anything in her inner world without any effort. She remembered that there were several small copper boxes buried under the pile of pearls and jades. She let her spiritual consciousness rummage through the jewelry and saw her all-purpose food box. Chapter 2708. She simply let her divine sense clone open the all-purpose food box and took out a meat bun. She held it in her hand and took a bite without hesitation. It was warm and soft, and the taste of the bun was especially good. No wonder Shaolin kept saying that she wanted to eat a bun all day after eating one. Thinking of her soft and cute little sister, Arbor's eyes softened. Intentionally or unintentionally, her gaze moved towards the 3,000 stone sculptures. There was finally an open space behind the stone sculptures. In addition to the strangely shaped snake-shaped sculpture howling at the sky, there was also a golden martial ant walking around like she had ADHD. Ever since she had asked Golden Martial Ant to come out and help Jojo, Jojo had let her stay in his inner world. It was as if this Golden Martial Ant couldn't stop walking around the snake-shaped sculpture all day long. It gave Jojo a headache. Arbor was helpless. Just as she was about to retract her gaze, her line of sight suddenly paused, and her divine sense suddenly stopped on the snake-shaped stone sculpture. Could it be that she was hallucinating just now? Why did she seem to see the snake-shaped eyes of the stone sculpture suddenly move, as if the eyeballs under the eyelids rolled a circle? Don't scare me. Arbor used her divine sense to carefully scan the snake-shaped sculpture again. Seeing that it didn't move at all, she was slightly relieved. She must have been seeing things just now. She had been scaring herself all day and making a fuss about nothing. Arbor couldn't help but secretly laugh at herself for being timid. She retracted her divine sense and looked at the divine sense clone rummaging through the pile of jewelry to find a small copper box. Finally, the tiny figure pulled out several small copper chests from the pile of jewels. Arbor didn't know why, but a strange feeling slid through her heart. She felt that there were a dozen or so small copper boxes buried below, and she also felt that she should open these small boxes to take a look when she was feeling doubtful. Thus, when she opened the box, it was full of books and letters. The books were stacked up, there were a lot of books. Arbor's divine sense moved slightly and took out 3 of the small boxes. She then chased her divine sense clone back to Paradise Planet to continue training her divine sense. What are these books? Arbor flipped through the books and saw many books that she found familiar. She casually picked up a book and flipped through it. Seeing the small handwriting left behind when she was studying, she inexplicably felt that it was somewhat familiar. He took a pen and paper and wrote something down. Then, he put down the pen. He looked at his own handwriting and then at the book. Well, although they were a little different, it was certain that both handwriting were hers. In the past, her handwriting was a little immature, but now, her handwriting was even more vigorous, and her strokes were both good in form and spirit. Heaving a sigh of relief, Arbor picked up a letter and flipped it open. His eyes couldn't help but redden. It really was her master's handwritten letter. On the bottom left corner of the first page, there were the words Dark Phoenix. He flipped through a few handwritten books. One of them was about how to train people, and the other was about how to quickly become a shop owner. From the buying and selling of the store, to the location of the store, to the interior decoration style, everything was done in great detail. The strangest thing was that one of the handwritten books recorded the method of running a restaurant. It was written on how to set up chairs outside the store, how to get the staff to dress uniformly, how to improve the menu, and so on. Many of the methods seemed to coincide with Madame Moo's methods. Arbor's eyebrows moved slightly. Chapter 2709. There were many names of dishes that she had never heard of before in this book. At the bottom, there were small annotations, names of dishes and cooking methods. Most of them indicated which shop's signature dish on the mainland and what's special about it. Arbor was a little dumbfounded. She flipped through another handbook. There were many drawings of jewelry and other kinds of flowers. There were also many cute little animals that were made into dolls. All kinds of novel gadgets were clearly recorded in these handbooks. Arbor casually flipped through and saw several new necklaces. They were actually similar to the jewelry in the precious painting workshop. What was going on? He vaguely saw a little girl of about 7 or 8 years old sitting in front of a table covered with snow-white rice paper. She raised her head and asked softly, "Master, Master, do I have to memorize all of this and all of this?" Little treasure, you just have to memorize the medical and poison books. As for the rest, you can keep them. If you need them one day, you can just flip through them. Master, master, how can these animals be drawn so cute? What are these? Do you like them? Ask your martial uncle to make you a little yellow duck doll someday. Master, master, but I like this pig. Why do you like mini pigs? This little yellow duck looks much better than pigs. I like this little pig. Alright, ask your martial uncle to make one for you someday. Master, why don't you make one for little treasure? Could Xian Huang say that she was handicapped? Obviously not. Yes, her handicap was not as good as her junior martial sister. There was still her junior martial sister to enslave. My little treasure, have you finished the lollipop that master prepared for you last time? Children shouldn't eat too much candy. You'll have tooth decay. A voice floated over. Arbor knew that it was the voice of her martial uncle. Bah, don't mind your martial uncle. We didn't eat too much, right? Xian Huang. Don't lead the child astray. Call me senior martial sister. Impudent fellow. Thump. The carriage stopped for a moment. Arbor's thoughts flashed. When he came back to his senses, he found that the carriage had stopped. She hurriedly put away these letters that she treasured so much and put them back into the box and into her inner world. Her vision was a little misty. Crown Princess, we have arrived at Precious Painting Workshop. Kai Xiu reminded her and reached out to open the curtain for the Crown Princess. At a glance, he saw the little girl kneeling on the soft cushion of the carriage. Her eyes were red as she looked over. Her eyes were obviously tainted with a wisp of mist. She looked like a pitiful little animal. Cai Xiu immediately became nervous. She looked back and forth inside the carriage and hurriedly asked, Crown Prince Consort, what happened? The little Crown Princess' pitiful and aggrieved look really made one's heart ache. It's nothing. The little Crown Princess adjusted her mood. She sniffed her little nose, held Kai Xiu's hand, and got off the carriage. I just thought of some past events. I miss them and feel a little upset. Kai Xiu heaved a sigh of relief and couldn't help but laugh. Crown Princess, we have just recovered so many properties. Your friends have also successfully advanced. There are more happy things than sad things, right? Kai Chi also chattered and laughed. Yes, Crown Princess, you can't be depressed. We still have to continue fighting today. Chapter 27:10. The little Crown Princess glanced at them and couldn't help but want to laugh. After hearing what the two girls said, her heart did seem to relax a lot. She nodded and said, what you said makes sense. Kai Chi covered her mouth and laughed secretly. Then let's go in. The little Crown Princess nodded and lifted her spirits. She led the two of them into the Precious Painting Workshop. Eunuch Chen, who was accompanying them, followed closely behind them. Once they walked in, they realized that the atmosphere was a little strange. It should be said that the shop was so bleak that it was a little strange. The shopkeeper of the Precious Painting Workshop heard that the Crown Princess was here and hurriedly came out to welcome her. Once he saw the little Crown Princess, he bowed with shame. This old servant is not doing a good job. The business of the Precious Painting Workshop is very bleak today. It's almost noon, but no one has stepped into the shop. The little Crown Princess waved her hand to get him to stand up and talk. All of this naturally didn't make sense. The Precious Painting Workshop was opened on Changle Street. Its location could be said to be better than the Kaidai Pavilion. There was a huge flow of people in front of the shop. Who didn't like jewelry? Even if they didn't buy it, they could still come in to take a look. Today, no one came in at this time. It was obvious that someone was messing with them. The shopkeeper was also an old expert in this field. He had already sent people out to find out the news. Now that the crown princess was here, he hurriedly invited her to take a seat and asked someone to serve her tea. Soon, the few workers who were sent out to find out the news returned. They all reported to the old shopkeeper with strange expressions. I found out some clues from a fellow villager. That fellow villager is working under the young master of the Goo family. I heard that the young mistress of the Goo family and many other noble ladies have joined forces to boycott the precious painting workshop. They said that, as the worker spoke, he carefully lifted his head and glanced at the little crown princess. This glance made him dizzy. The little crown princess was exquisite and beautiful like a cold jade doll. He didn't dare to look at her anymore. He quickly lowered his head and didn't dare to speak. Speak. Arbor knew what he was afraid of and said lightly, I'll pardon you. Yes. That waiter only felt his heart sink a little. After thinking about how to phrase it, he hurriedly said, those upper-class matrons all said that Crown Prince Consort, you came from a small mountain village in the lower star domain, so your horizons are very ordinary. If they come to our shop to buy things, then wouldn't they all become village girls? Bullshit. The shopkeeper couldn't help but curse. He shouted angrily, this is outrageous. How dare they talk about their crown princess like that? They must be tired of living. The little crown princess wasn't angry. She said indifferently, write down the names of those noblewomen and put them on the blacklist. In the future, as long as it's under my name, they won't be welcome. Yes. The shop assistant nodded his head vigorously. He remembered who it was and would write it down for the shopkeeper when he got back. Everyone, don't worry. Even if the shop loses money every day, I can still afford to support you, the little crown princess said calmly. It will get better. Kai Xiao couldn't help but feel a little heartache. In her opinion, the crown princess never went out to provoke others. Although she treated people coldly, she was still distant and polite. She wouldn't think of ways to humiliate the servants just because of her noble status. She really didn't know why those noble ladies were always thinking about how to deal with the crown princess even though they had nothing better to do. Chapter 27:11. The shopkeeper hastily said, if the shop continues to be like this, the crown princess can cut this old servant's wages in half. The little crown princess shook her head. No one's wages will be reduced. You just have to do your job properly. As long as you are loyal and devoted without any disloyalty, wages and whatnot are all trivial matters. Yes, crown princess. Everyone was both happy and a little sad. They thought that the little crown princess must be feeling terrible right now. After all, a good shop had turned into this after just one day of business. Unexpectedly, their crown princess didn't care at all. In any case, the house and land were all hers, so she didn't need to spend an expensive rent. She just needed to spend a bit of labor every day, so it wasn't considered a loss. How could they know that in the eyes of a nouveau riche like the crown princess, this bit of labor money was really nothing? If it was a loss, then so be it. In any case, she had just received 100 million spirit coins from Mu Jingfeng as a tribute. Who knew how long she could continue to lose? The little crown princess had only drunk half a cup of tea when she heard the sound of horse hooves outside. The carriage slowly stopped in front of her precious painting house. The two slender receptionists guarding the door ran in excitedly, practically shrieking, Crown Prince Consort, Crown Prince Consort. Kong, Princess Consort Kong has arrived. Princess Consort Kang's low-key and luxurious carriage stopped in front of Precious Painting House. When the carriage's curtain was lifted, Danling smilingly helped the Princess Consort down from the carriage. The passers-by all stopped to watch. Several noblewomen who were walking out of the clothing store opposite couldn't help but exclaim, "Heavens, is that Princess Consort Kong? Why does she look 10 years younger?" "Oh, that's right. Princess Consort has changed so much." As those noblewomen spoke, they hurriedly squeezed forward to greet Princess Consort Kong. Princess Consort Kong cheerfully let them rise and exchanged a few pleasantries. "Madam Jiang, Madam Li, are you shopping?" "That's right, today's weather is good." Princess Consort, it's only been a few short days since we parted at Zhongli Estate, but you've changed so much. Did Princess Consort encounter some opportunity? I hope you won't be stingy with your guidance." A few women surrounded Wang Fei and chattered incessantly. Their eyes were filled with envy, but there was no jealousy. Everyone knew that Prince Kong loved his wife as much as his own life. With Prince Kang's means, naturally, he would search the entire divine continent for Princess Consort to find treasures like elixirs and beautifying medicines to make Princess Consort happy. Princess Consort Kong smiled happily. When she looked up, she happened to see the young crown princess running out of Zhenhua workshop. "Jojo." Princess Consort Kong hurried forward. Arbor also came to greet her. "Imperial Aunt." "Hey, my good child, let Auntie take a look. Why are your eyes red? Did someone bully you?" Princess Consort Kang's face immediately darkened. The madams immediately took a few steps back, carefully not daring to speak. "It's nothing. Who can bully me?" Arbor hooked his arm around Princess Consort Kang's arm, a rare happy expression appearing on the little stoic's face. "Why did Auntie come? You've just taken over this shop, so it's like a newly opened shop. Of course, Auntie has to come and take a look. While she's at it, she's also shamelessly asking you for some beautifying cream. Take a look at Auntie, how does her complexion look?" "Much better." Arbor's eyes also had a hint of a smile, and he asked with a nod, "Do you still feel cold recently?" "Much better, much better." The Princess Consort beamed with delight. Chapter 27:12. Take the warm jade pill for another month or two. When the old prince has gathered all the herbs on the list, we can perform acupuncture. The Princess Consort nodded repeatedly. Good, good, good. The madams that the Princess Consort had addressed as Madam Li and Madam Jiang also involuntarily followed in. They truly felt their hearts itch unbearably when they heard the conversation between the Princess Consort and the Crown Princess. They had all heard the Princess Consort asking the Crown Princess for a beautifying ointment just now. What was this beautifying ointment? Did it have anything to do with Princess Kang's current appearance? Madame Jiang was an impatient person and hastily interjected, "My apologies. Greetings to the Crown Princess." "Princess Consort, why don't you tell us? Are you trying to make us anxious to death?" Princess Kong snapped out of her reverie and finally noticed Madame Jiang and the others who had followed in. She couldn't help but smile as she said, "Madame Jiang is anxious. How can I not be anxious? Princess Consort, you don't know how much you've changed in just a few days. If we hadn't seen the insignia of Prince Kong Qing's estate's carriage just now, we wouldn't have dared to come forward to acknowledge you." That's right, that's right. Princess Consort, did something good happen? Tell us about it. It really is something good. Princess Kong said with a smile, "It was that day at the gathering at Zhongli Estate, when I brought my niece-in-law home, something good happened. Quickly tell us, quickly tell us." The madams anxiously urged. Princess Kong couldn't help but chuckle softly as she said, "My crown princess gave me a black-grade beautifying pill. After eating it, my entire body felt refreshed. Not only that, the crown princess also gave me a box of beautifying ointment." As Princess Kong spoke, she took out the remaining beautifying ointment in her storage talisman and opened it for them to see. As soon as she opened the lid, a faint fragrance faintly wafted into their breaths. Madame Jiang hastily reached out to take the beautifying ointment from Princess Kang's hand, but Princess Kang hastily took it back and shook her head as she said, "I only have that much left. I can't give it away." "Stingy." Madame Jiang huffed, then said, "It's not like we haven't eaten a black-grade beautifying pill before. Is it really that effective? Just look at me and you'll know." Prince Consort Kang smiled. Madame Jiang and the others instantly believed him by 80 to 90%. They also planned to buy a beautifying pill. Could it be that this little crown princess was really capable? In the past, the beautifying pills sold by Zhenhua Workshop did not have such a heaven-defying effect. The beautifying pill could only allow people to maintain their original appearance and not continue to age. If you took the beautifying pill when you were 50 or 60 years old, it would be useless. But Princess Consort Kang and the others all knew that in the past, she looked more than 10 years older than she did now. Now, looking at Wang Fei's face, there was not a single wrinkle. Her skin was smooth and delicate, and the area around her eyes did not seem as loose as before. What was even more amazing was that although Princess Consort Kang was not very fat in the past, she was not thin either. Now, her figure had also become much more symmetrical, and she was even more graceful than when she was young. So, was the beautifying pill that Princess Consort Kang took specially made? It could actually make a person look so many years younger. Madame Jiang was the most impatient, and she hastily asked, "Crown Princess, is the beautifying pill that Princess Consort Kang took still available for sale? I also want to buy one and try it." Arbor was slightly taken aback. Only now did he know why Princess Consort Kang wanted to come here today. Chapter 27:13. She was deliberately using herself to prove that the beautifying pills produced by Precious Painting Workshop, which the Crown Princess had taken over, had miraculous effects. Feeling somewhat moved, Arbor supported Princess Consort Kang's hand and nodded at Madame Jiang. 1,000,000 spirit coins for one pill. The madams widened their eyes. Princess Consort Kang's mouth twitched. She thought to herself that this niece-in-law of hers was truly black-hearted, but she quite liked her, ha ha ha. There aren't many beautifying pills, so buy them quickly. Little Crown Princess said this again. Her stoic face was deadpan, and there wasn't a hint of a smile at all. Master had recorded in his handwritten letter that doing business had to be slow and steady. After all, rare goods were worth hoarding. She couldn't take out all the good stuff at once. Master's words of experience definitely made sense. Princess Consort Kang held back her laughter when she recalled the little fellow taking out a small stew pot from her inner world that day. It was filled to the brim with beautifying pills, so how could there not be many of them? This little trickster's stoic face was filled with seriousness. The more she looked at her, the cuter she was. When the madams heard that the price was so high, they all became somewhat hesitant. Madame Jiang looked at her own plump figure, then glanced at Princess Consort Kang, and asked worriedly, "Then can you really slim down after eating it?" Little Crown Princess was expressionless as she nodded very indifferently. This is the most basic beautifying effect. After taking it, you'll discover that your skin will be a little better than yesterday every day. Under the imperceptible influence, you'll be like a young girl in a few months' time. This effect can be maintained for about 100 years. The effect will be even better if it's taken together with corresponding longevity pills. Little Crown Princess paused with a serious expression, completely devoid of any intention to promote a product. She said, "This Crown Princess has a pill shop in the southern part of the city called Heavenly Pill Workshop. It will reopen in 3 days. At that time, there will be all kinds of longevity pills with different effects for sale. You can go take a look then." Princess Consort Kang suppressed her laughter and nodded with a serious expression. Madam Jiang, this money was not spent in vain at all. I guarantee that once you take it, you'll see the effects immediately. All right, all right. Madam Jiang was the first to be moved by his words. She gritted her teeth and nodded. I'll buy it. The other madams planned to wait and see, but their hearts would bleed the next day. The little stoic nodded. This is a special discount price today. When the price goes back to normal tomorrow, it won't be this price anymore. Princess Consort Kang's mouth twitched again. When she got home, she was going to tell the old prince not to offend her niece-in-law in the future. Her ruthlessness in swindling others was even greater than her eldest nephew's. The little crown princess had just taken over the precious painting workshop, and she had only done one business today. This single transaction alone earned him a net profit of 1 million spirit coins. This was because the herbs needed to concoct the beautifying pill were all grown by Cho in the 100-herb garden on Paradise Planet. Everyone in the shop, from the shopkeeper to the workers, was so happy that they were all smiling. They were truly happy for the crown princess. Look, the crown princess had this kind of ability. Their shop didn't even need to open for business in a year. The moment they opened, they could make up for a year's worth of other shops' profits. Wasn't it already pretty good if a normal shop could make a profit of 100,000 spirit coins a month? They were overjoyed that the little crown princess could make 1 million a day with a single transaction. It had to be said that Princess Consort Kang's visit was truly very effective. Chapter 27:14. In the afternoon, Precious Painting Workshop's business slowly returned to normal. If you dare to say that Precious Painting Workshop is opened by a village girl, I'll slap you to death. Even Princess Consort Kang came to support Precious Painting Workshop. Village girl my ass. With Princess Consort Kang taking the lead, all the matrons of the imperial family who wanted to build a good relationship with Princess Consort Kang and the crown princess all came to support without prior consultation. At first, they were a little hesitant, but when they saw that the quality of the goods in the shop had not changed, they were very happy. They also wanted to build a good relationship, so they bought many things. As a result, those matrons of the aristocratic families who thought of themselves as virtuous were at their wits' end. Precious Painting Workshop did not earn money from these aristocratic families, but they still had the support of the imperial family. As long as the little crown princess did a few palace business, she would not be lacking in income this year. Moreover, she was doing business for fun. Even if she made a loss, the imperial family would not shortchange her. With this thought, some of the matrons of the aristocratic families gave up on the idea of boycotting Precious Painting Workshop. Arbor was too lazy to care about what other people thought. After sending off Imperial Aunt, he brought people to inspect the business as usual. The business was bleak, but so what? The little crown princess did not lack the money to make a loss. When she arrived at Kaidai Pavilion, she called shopkeeper Hu over and took out 10 caddies of holy rice and 10 caddies of vegetables for him. She said, "Add a new item on the menu. It's a special item. I'll provide some for free today. Anyone who comes to our Kaidai Pavilion today can try a small bowl of holy rice and a plate of spirit dishes. In the future, as long as it's the vegetables, rice, and grains that I provide, it will be calculated at a special price. There will be a limited supply every day. Let's temporarily set it at 30,000 spirit coins for a small bowl of rice. A plate of spirit dishes will be 50,000 spirit coins." The little crown princess thought of what was written in the handbook, and her eyes turned again. If the supply does not meet the demand in the future, we'll sell it at the auction price. The highest bidder wins. She had good goods in her hands, so how could she not have enough people to buy? Was her holy rice ordinary rice? The warehouse of the vegetables and fruits that she had planted on Paradise Planet was almost full. Would she go around telling others about it? Humph. When her special products really became famous, there would be plenty of people begging to buy them. She would just let them despise her now. When had she ever not slapped the faces of those who despised her back? Although shopkeeper who did not understand where the young Crown Prince Consort's confidence came from, he still nodded and memorized the Crown Prince Consort's words in his heart. From now on, we'll put up a blacklist in the shop. No one on the blacklist will be allowed to enter the shop. As long as it's my business, it's on the blacklist. It can be used in all shops. The young Crown Prince Consort said solemnly, "Arin only accepts polite people. Forget about those shrews from the marketplace." The corners of shopkeeper whose mouth twitched. In his heart, he thought that his little crown princess was really willful. He hurriedly agreed with a smile and let the workers prepare the blacklist. After Arbor gave these instructions, he felt a little proud. Who said she didn't know how to run a business? Even if she didn't know how to do it, she had her omnipotent master. These people wanted to use this little scheme to defeat her. They were simply indulging in fantasy. When she came out of the shop in the southern part of the city, the sky was already close to dusk. At this moment, she saw a fast horse galloping in front of her. Aunt Jing flipped off the horse's back and hurriedly bowed. "Crown Princess, please return to Yulon Court quickly. His Highness the Crown Prince is furious." Chapter 27:15. Fly into a rage. She understood Mo Lien's personality the best. At least on the surface, this crown prince really knew when to advance and when to retreat. He was gentle and refined, making people feel as if they were bathing in the spring breeze. To be able to make Aunt Jing run over to find her and say that His Highness the Crown Prince would fly into a rage, he probably drew his sword in a murderous rage. "Crown Princess, His Highness the Crown Prince is about to execute all the maids and servants in Yulon Court," Aunt Jing hurriedly said with a look of shock on her face. Killing people in the Crown Princess's maiden home would be a bad reputation no matter what. Aunt Jing had rushed over in a hurry to find the Crown Princess to save the day. She had a feeling that only the Crown Princess could persuade the enraged Crown Prince, and only the Crown Princess could save the day. The young Crown Princess was startled, and she quickly asked, "What's going on?" As she spoke, she had already walked over to the carriage and swiftly leaped onto it. Aunt Jing mounted the horse and followed beside the carriage. When she saw the young Crown Princess lift the carriage curtain, she leaned over and whispered, "The Crown Princess will know when we get back." The young Crown Princess frowned. It seemed that this matter wasn't easy to talk about outside. She nodded and instructed the coachman to speed up the carriage towards the Mu estate. By the time the carriage arrived at the Mu estate, it was already an hour later. Arbor alighted and immediately rushed to Jade Orchid Court with Aunt Jing and the others. At the entrance, they almost bumped into Mu Qingya, Mu Rochuan, and the others, who were rushing over. Mu Qingya nodded at her and bowed in greeting. "The Crown Princess has returned." The young Crown Princess coldly swept a glance at her before turning to run into Jade Orchid Court. The veins on Mu Rochuan's forehead were throbbing in anger. She pulled her mother and whispered, "Mother, why do you have to make yourself suffer like this?" Mu Qingya frowned and patted the back of her daughter's hand. "There's a difference between a ruler and a subject. She married into the imperial family and naturally represents the imperial family's dignity. Some etiquette is also necessary. But you're still her stepmother. How can an elder bow to a junior?" Mu Rochuan said angrily. "All right, let's go in and see what's going on." Mu Qingya tugged at her daughter. She had just recovered from a serious illness and her complexion did not look too good. However, when she heard that the Crown Prince was enraged in Yulon Park, she hurried over. If the Crown Prince was angered, then it was naturally because she, as the mistress of the household, had not made proper arrangements. No matter what, she could not shirk this responsibility. She had to be there. Mu Rochuan felt stifled as she held her mother's hand and walked into the courtyard. At this time, Arbor was stopped by Zhou Mama and several maidservants with disheveled hair. Nanny Zhou and the others knelt on the ground and repeatedly kowtowed to her, crying and shouting. They kept saying that it was Chrysanthemum and Plum Immortal's fault, that they should not be implicated, and so on. Xiao Mu felt her head swell. She simply did not know what had happened. Amidst the commotion, Prince Mo walked out in a green robe. His long hair was disheveled, and he looked like he had just taken a bath. There were still water droplets on his hair that had not been dried with the fire spirit. His handsome face was full of murderous intent. His phoenix eyes narrowed dangerously as he coldly surveyed his surroundings. When he saw Arbor, he was slightly startled, and the hostility between his brows eased a bit. So the crown prince was so handsome after taking a bath. His features were picturesque, and his person was like jade. So good-looking. Sir Jojo's eyes lit up. He hurriedly ran over and threw himself into the crown prince's arms, rubbing his chest. "I'm back." Chapter 27:16. Strangely, Aunt Jing, who was standing not far away from the two, could clearly feel that the crown prince's cold and vicious aura, which was as sharp as a blade, had lessened greatly. It was as if he had suddenly gone from the cold winter to the warm spring breeze and flourishing flowers. Aunt Jing let out a small sigh of relief. She felt that her decision to gallop on horseback to find the crown princess to save the situation had been too wise. As expected, only the crown princess could pacify the crown prince, who was burning with rage and had gone berserk, down. Prince Mo reached out to hug his little wife. His expression finally showed some joy. Looking at the little fellow who was rubbing against his chest, he couldn't help but rub her head. "Little liar. It's already dark, and you lied to me that you'd be back soon." The little fellow looked up at the sky, then buried her little head in his chest and rubbed against him. "I bought you something good to eat. As compensation. Let's go in and eat." Arbor suddenly paused. His gaze fell on the two people who had been lifted up from the ground and beaten to a pulp. The two women were already so bloody that their original faces couldn't be seen. They couldn't be any more dead. And she could feel that the crown prince despised the two of them to the extreme. "Burn them," he said coldly. His subordinates didn't dare to linger for a moment. They hurriedly carried the two women out of the courtyard. The little crown princess blinked and looked up at Prince Mo. The crown prince had always been on the throne. It was impossible to say that he was a kind-hearted person. But she understood him. Deep down, he was actually very indifferent to people and things. He would not easily get angry over such trivial matters. However, once he got angry, there would definitely be bloodshed on the spot. He would not give anyone any chance to breathe. The little fellow was pulled into the room by Prince Mo, and the door was closed with a bang. Her little body was rolled up into a ball and held in his arms. Sir Jojo strangely felt that he wasn't in a good mood. He reached out and patted his back comfortingly. "What happened?" "Jojo, your husband was almost molested by a female hooligan." "What?" Arbor's hair stood on end. He looked up at him. "Who? Are they the two bloody women just now?" Mo Lien nodded and angrily recounted what had happened. It turned out that when the crown prince woke up and saw that it was getting late, he planned to take a bath and change his clothes. When Jojo returned, he would bring her to the palace for the banquet. Who would have thought that when the bath was about to end, the two maidservants named Zhu Xian and Mei Xian actually sneaked to the door of the inner courtyard side room, intending to climb in through the window and have close contact with the crown prince. In the end, that girl called Zhu Xian had just taken a step and climbed up to the window when she was discovered by the hidden guards. The secret guard immediately jumped out from his hiding place, picked up the gauzy girl, and threw her into the courtyard. At the same time, the crown prince hurriedly put on his clothes and got up. He pushed open the door and saw the two reckless people. He was so angry that his hair almost curled. It had been a long time since someone could anger him like this. If those two sluts really barged into his room and spread rumors to his little wife's ears, Mo Lien couldn't help but shudder. With the little fellow's awkward personality, he didn't know if she would dislike him and distance herself from him. He couldn't help but feel sorry for himself when he thought about it. Prince Mo hugged his little wife and hurriedly said, before they could climb in, they were thrown away by the secret guard. Chapter 27:17. The implication was that they hadn't seen anything about her husband and that he was still innocent. Arbor was so angry that he felt dizzy. Today's matter couldn't be settled peacefully. How many days had it been since she came back? Why did all the maidservants in her maiden family want to climb onto the crown prince? Who were they trying to disgust? It seemed that her temper was too good. That was why they were all so unafraid of death. The little fellow's face was tense, and Prince Mo felt a little uneasy. She pulled him out of the side room and coldly looked at Nanny Zhou and the others who were kneeling and sobbing in the courtyard. When she saw Mu Qingya's awkward expression, she said coldly, "Guards, prepare the carriage to return to the Eastern Palace." Mu Qingya sighed in relief, but her expression was still a little uneasy. Are the Crown Princess and His Highness the Crown Prince going back to the palace for the banquet? Arbor ignored her and turned to Caixio and Kai Chi. Pack up everything and leave now. Why should she continue to stay in her maiden home when it was so unbearable? It wasn't like she didn't have a place to stay. What a joke. Those who didn't know better would think that she had no choice but to stay here. His Highness the Crown Prince blinked and looked down at his little wife. "Jojo, are we going back?" Arbor nodded. "Let's go home." Mu Qingya looked a little flustered. She couldn't bear the crime of forcing the Crown Prince and the Crown Princess to leave. She hurriedly stepped forward and tried to persuade them. "Your Highness the Crown Prince, Crown Princess, I will give you an explanation for this matter." "What explanation?" Arbor rudely interrupted her and said with a sneer, "Ever since I stepped into the Mu family, tell me yourself, how many things have happened? I thought that after what happened with Xiao Xing, you would at least be a little more careful. I didn't expect that you would stuff such trash into Yulan Court." No, Mu Qingya was in a panic. She hurried forward to explain, but she was in such a hurry that she tripped and almost tripped. Mu Rochuan hurriedly rushed forward to support her. Her eyes were filled with anger as she glared at Arbor. She suppressed her anger and said in a low voice, "Crown Princess, can you listen to my mother's explanation?" "What else is there to explain?" Qiao Mu gazed coldly at this pair of mother and daughter. She then turned around to tell Caixio and Caichi, who were carrying things out, "Hurry up. This Crown Prince Consort doesn't want to stay in this foul place for even a minute longer. In any case, he had already received the compensation that he needed. This place was not worth being nostalgic about." Mu Qingya was so angry that she was somewhat out of her wits. When she turned around and saw Mu Jingfeng and Mu Xingchen walking in, it was as if she had grabbed onto a life-saving straw. She hurriedly went forward and apologized, "Husband, it's this concubine's incompetence in managing the household that caused the Crown Princess and His Highness the Crown Prince to leave in anger." Mu Jingfeng already knew about what happened in Yulan Court. Now that he saw the little Crown Princess's angry appearance, he could not help but feel angry. "What are you doing now? Making a fuss at home all day long without a moment of peace." Arbor could not be bothered with him. If he wanted to make a fuss, then let him. In any case, in this man's eyes, she was not a good daughter no matter what. To be able to make someone who had never accepted you like you, that was quite a difficult setting. She had no reason to curry favor with this person and make him like her. After all, she was not a spirit coin, right? Kai Xiao and Kai Chi moved swiftly. As they spoke, they had already packed up the things. Chapter 27:18. The two swiftly packed the Crown Princess and Crown Prince's clothes and utensils into the carriage before standing next to Li Yi and coldly watching the flustered and exasperated Mu Jingfeng and his wife. What thousand-year-old patrician family? The servant girls they raised were all the same kind of trash, wholeheartedly wanting to climb into their master's bed. They were simply rotten to the core. These reckless things must have thought that His Highness the Crown Prince's normally gentle temperament was easy to bully. How could they have expected that this Crown Prince was actually an exceptionally cold and indifferent person? After interacting with the couple for a few days, Cai Xiu and Cai Chi had already grasped their two masters' temperaments. His Highness the Crown Prince looked very good-natured, but he was actually much more hard-hearted than the stoic-faced Crown Prince Consort. Arbor. Mu Jingfeng couldn't help but berate. She didn't even say a word and immediately dragged the Crown Prince back to the Eastern Palace, never to return home again. If word got out, people would really think that their Mu family had slighted their daughter and son-in-law who had returned home. If the Emperor knew, he would think that their Mu family didn't welcome His Highness the Crown Prince's return to the capital. What are you yelling for? Prince Mo coldly glanced at Mu Jingfeng. At this time, Mu Jingfeng's retainer walked over and whispered into his ear. Only then did Mu Jingfeng's cold and hard expression slightly ease up. He patiently cupped his hands towards His Highness the Crown Prince and gently advised, Your Highness the Crown Prince, I have already investigated this matter, including Xiao Xing's clash with the Crown Prince last time. It truly has nothing to do with Madam. Mu Xingchen already knew what happened in Yulan court at this time. He walked up and coldly looked at Zhou Mama's party. You all truly have big guts. These wicked servants actually dared to covet his brother-in-law and wanted to steal his sister's man. They simply deserve to die. Zhou Mama's entire body trembled. She also felt extremely wronged in this matter. Who would have thought that Chrysanthemum Fairy, the two most intelligent and sensible servants, would do such a foolish thing and even implicate themselves? Xiao Xing had already infuriated the Crown Prince and Crown Princess. Now, Chrysanthemum Fairy was even bolder, actually daring to secretly climb through the window, wanting to take advantage of His Highness the Crown Prince's bath to get close to him. He was truly audacious. Eldest young master is wise. This servant is definitely not on the same side as these two wretched girls. Nanny Zhou kowtowed with tears and snot flowing down her face. She hurriedly said, the two of them were so audacious that they deserved to die. However, we are innocent. Mu Xingchen glanced at them coldly, then looked at Madame Mu with a hint of suspicion in his eyes. Madame really doesn't know about this. Mu Qingya raised her head abruptly and looked at her son in shock. She stared at him blankly as if she didn't recognize him. Big brother. Mu Rochuan panicked. How can you treat mother like this? You actually suspect mother. Why? Don't you know what kind of person mother is after all these years? You're pissing me off. Don't talk to big brother like that. Mu Qingya grabbed Mu Rochuan's hand with tears in her eyes. Mu Xingchen also felt that his question was abrupt. Seeing Mu Qingya on the verge of collapse, he couldn't bear it any longer. Thinking of Mu Qingya's meticulous care for him all these years, he couldn't help but let out a long sigh. I also hope that I guessed wrongly. However, all the signs indicated that Madame really couldn't escape her involvement in this matter. Chapter 27:19. At the side, Mu Jingfeng was also angered half to death. He coldly looked at his son and said, You're really becoming more and more outrageous. You don't even call her mother and learn from some uneducated people to call her madam. Mu Jingfeng angrily said, just as your younger sister said, your mother has taken care of you for so many years. Don't tell me that she's nurtured you into an ingrate. Let's go. Arbor could not be bothered to listen to Mu Jingfeng's indirect scolding and directly gave the order to pull His Highness the Crown Prince out of Jade Orchid Court. Stop right there. Mu Jingfeng exasperatedly roared. Seeing that Arbor ignored him and pulled the Crown Prince out of Jade Orchid Court, Mu Jingfeng could not help but angrily shout, this matter has nothing to do with your stepmother. Father has already investigated clearly. These two girls, Zhu Xian and Mei Xian, are concubine Shi's subordinates in your Jade Orchid Court. Mu Qingya was startled and turned to look at Mu Jingfeng. Husband, this matter has been investigated clearly. Mu Jingfeng nodded with a heavy expression. Last time, Shaoxing suddenly went crazy in the woodshed because concubine Shi sent Mu He to secretly sneak into the woodshed at night. Mu Rochuan angrily said, what is concubine Shi up to now? I've already sent people to call concubine Shi and Mu He over. Can't the crown princess be at ease for a moment? Must she be so obstinate and self-opinionated, not listening to others at all and pouring dirty water on madam's head? Mu Jingfeng, you'd best pay attention to your words. Prince Mo turned around and coldly looked at Mu Jingfeng before him. Mu Jingfeng hastily cupped his hands and said, Your Highness the Crown Prince, please allow me to report this. This steward of Jade Orchid Court, as well as the group of servants, did not do their job well and provoked Your Highness's anger. I will naturally banish all of them from the Mu family. I hope the two of you will stay for a moment. Concubine Shi dared to do such a daring and presumptuous thing, so I will definitely properly punish her. When Nanny Zhou and the rest heard this, they all collapsed to the ground and cried to the heavens and the earth, begging the family head to let them off. However, Mu Jingfeng did not even spare them a glance and directly got people to drag them to kneel outside Yulan Court. Just as Shi Huixin entered Yulan Court with an uneasy heart, she saw Mu Jingfeng rudely kick her in her direction. Ah! Shi Huixin immediately knelt on the ground. This heavy kick was avoided by her. Second Miss Mu Ro Yen and sixth Miss Mu Ro Yun came over together. Seeing this, they hurriedly reached out to help their mother up. Their faces were filled with anger as they turned to look at their father, Mu Jingfeng. Father, what are you doing? Ask your good concubine what she did. Mu Jingfeng glared at Mu He, who was kneeling at the side. Stop pretending. I've checked everything out. Today, the two maidservants in Yulan Garden, Shi Huixin, were arranged by you. Also, that last Shaoxing went crazy in the woodshed. You must have asked Mu He to drug her with some kind of medicine. That's why she mutated into a monster. It must be some kind of poisonous powder that causes people to go berserk. Shi Huixin trembled with fear and could not help but cry out for injustice. Husband, you can't wrong me like this just to protect Madam, right? Madam is the one in charge of the entire household. The manpower in Yulan Court was also allocated by Madam. What does it have to do with this concubine? You still dare to spout nonsense and deny it. Mu Jingfeng angrily said. He directly threw some jewelry he found in the two maidservants' room in front of Shi Huixin. Did you reward these? Ha, it's true that generous rewards will attract brave men. Chapter 27:20. Concubine Shi was terrified, her eyelids twitching uncontrollably. Not only do you want to make things difficult for the crown princess, but you also want to use this to pull Madam down, right? Mu Jingfeng pointed at concubine Shi and scolded, You usually look gentle and kind, but I didn't expect you to be so scheming. This family head was almost kept in the dark by you and wrongly blamed Madam. Shi Huixin turned pale with fright and abruptly turned to look at Mu Qingya. The venomous glint in her eyes could practically turn into a substantial arrow and shoot out. She already knew that Juxian and Mei Xian were people she arranged to be in Yulon court. This woman, had long been watching all of this coldly from the sidelines. Sure, Huixin originally thought that she was a hunter and could laugh as she watched the dog-eat-dog scene in Yulon court. How could a man not have an affair? Even if the crown princess was a fairy, there would always be a time when men were disgusted. What was wrong with changing their tastes? However, with the crown princess's arrogant personality, if she knew that His Highness the Crown Prince favored two maidservants, who knew how she would kick up a fuss? His Highness might tolerate it once or twice. If she caused too much trouble, she would definitely be disliked by His Highness the Crown Prince. She could just sit and watch with a sneer, so she repeatedly warned her two daughters not to make a move, intending to sit and watch the dragons fight. Who would have thought that she would be pecked blind by the wild goose all day long? Not only did His Highness not play by the rules, but even Madame was biting back at her. She had long known that this Madame, who ascended to the position of the family head's wife with a body without any cultivation, must be a very scheming person. However, she did not expect her to be so vicious as to push all of this to her. Most importantly, Mu Jingfeng really believed it. Sure, Huixin hurriedly walked a few steps on her knees and cried, "Husband, this concubine has been wronged." How could there be such a coincidence that Mu Liang found a large amount of jewelry in the two maidservants' room as soon as he went to search? Only husband, that brainless person, could be fooled like this. This concubine is merely a small concubine. How can I be the master of Yulon court? Concubine sure cried. How can this concubine's hands be so long? Even if this concubine harbored some ill intentions, there's no way I could. Shut up. Mu Jingfeng looked at her coldly and kicked her to the side. Mu Royun and Mu Ruyan became anxious. Father, how can you treat mother like this? Mother. This was the first time Mu Jingfeng heard this word from his two daughters. In a moment of desperation, Mu Royan and Mu Royun also blurted out the way they usually addressed each other in private. When the two of them were outside, they were actually very polite. They never dared to be presumptuous in front of their father and always called Inyang Shirinyang. So this is how you teach your daughter? She's so unruly. Mu Jingfeng said coldly. I thought you were a good person, but it turns out that you've hidden yourself quite well. Sure, Huixin's face was deathly pale, unable to defend herself. How did things come to this? Sure, Huixin simply couldn't figure it out. She hurriedly crawled a few steps forward and tugged at Mu Jingfeng's trousers as she cried, Husband, husband, this concubine knows her wrongs. Husband, please forgive this concubine this once. Sure, Huixin was not foolish. Since husband had already said this, it meant that he had already decided that she had to take the blame today. Regardless of whether Madame was the one who did this, husband wanted to absolve Madame. Thus, she had to admit it no matter what. Even if she did not admit it, she had to swallow her pride and admit it. Chapter 27-21. Moreover, even if they took 10,000 steps back, there were both witnesses and evidence. She really couldn't be unrelated to the matter of Zhu Xian and Mei Xian climbing through the window. Concubine Sure was able to secure a position in this family and even gave birth to two daughters, so she naturally won Mu Jingfeng's heart. Arbor couldn't be bothered to watch Concubine Sure cry and beg for Mu Jingfeng's forgiveness. He pulled the crown prince and walked straight to the carriage parked at the entrance of Yulon court. Before boarding the carriage, she coldly said, It's not too much to beat such a wicked woman to death. If family head Mu's heart aches and you can't do it, this crown princess can send someone to do it for you. Mu Jingfeng and Shi Huixin both stiffened. Let alone Shi Huixin, even Mu Jingfeng didn't expect this at all. This little crown princess was actually so ruthless. It was just a small matter, yet she wanted to beat Shi Huixin to death. Mu Jingfeng's expression darkened. Concubine Shi is in the wrong, but her crime doesn't warrant death. What's more, the two main culprits' maidservants have already been Huifeng. Crown Princess. Drag concubine Shi out and flog her 200 times. To a delicate and frail concubine, 200 floggings was a death sentence. Although concubine Shi had a bit of cultivation to protect herself, the ones flogging her were all great spiritual masters above level 11 in the Hidden Night Pavilion. Let alone 200 floggings, she didn't even know if she could endure 100 floggings. What are you doing? You can't do this. Concubine Shi shrieked in fright and cast her gaze to Mu Jingfeng. Husband, husband, save me, husband. Concubine. Concubine, Mu Rouyen and Mu Rouyun were very anxious, and they hastily came up to drag their mother away. Huifeng rudely blocked them with his sword and coldly said, "Unrelated people should all stay away. Don't obstruct official business." When the carriage moved, concubine Shi's wretched wails had already spread. Arbor coldly lowered the carriage's curtains, not the least bit moved by her words. Jojo. Prince Mo reached out and pulled the little fellow into his arms, shaking her little body. Don't be angry, okay? Arbor was a little angry with herself. These 2 days, she should have left after receiving the compensation, but she still insisted on staying in the Mu family that didn't like her, causing the crown prince to suffer for no reason. It was bad enough that she had to suffer, but now this little concubine mother dared to bully her man. She was simply acting recklessly. I'm sorry for making you suffer. Arbor nestled in his arms obediently, feeling a little down. Crown Prince Mo was taken aback, and the messy thoughts in his mind instantly vanished without a trace. Jojo was not angry with him. Jojo was worried about him. The crown prince was so happy that he wanted to fly. He hugged the little fellow and said softly, "It's good that you're not angry with me." Why would I be angry at you? Jojo thought about it and rolled his eyes at him. I'm not a fool. If I don't believe you, I'll believe those gossipy girls. What was there to believe in those people? They were just a bunch of passers-by, so there was no need to pay attention to them. Prince Mo's eyes curved into a smile. Jojo. Your Highness, His Excellency the State Preceptor's carriage is coming. The coachman subconsciously slowed down. Prince Mo, who was interrupted, frowned slightly and said in displeasure, You even have to ask this. Go over. The 2 carriages, one on the left and one on the right, entered the palace road leading to Lishing Gate at the same time. However, the State Preceptor's carriage was carried by 16 people, so it moved rather slowly. When it made a big turn, it encountered the Crown Prince's carriage and had to stop. Chapter 27-22. State Preceptor, it's His Highness the Crown Prince's carriage. A servant in green followed the carriage. Seeing this, he couldn't help but frown slightly. His Highness the Crown Prince, who had caused an uproar with the Crown Princess not long after entering the capital, actually didn't care about the State Preceptor at all. He directly let the carriage pass without stopping for a moment, let alone greet the State Preceptor. Even the great Emperor was not so rude in front of the State Preceptor. The servant was angry. The Crown Prince and the State Preceptor entered the palace through Lishing Gate without any hindrance. Naturally, no one dared to stop them. Prince Mo and Jojo planned to go back to the East Palace first. The little Crown Princess was travel-worn all day. She still needed to wash up and change her clothes to not lose her dignity. The State Preceptor went directly to the banquet venue, the Hall of Wuda. It was almost 5:00 in the evening. The Hall of Wuda was already brightly lit. The officials who arrived first had already exchanged greetings and now sat down in front of several tables. Several officials stood in the middle of the hall with their families and chatted with others. The women were also familiar with each other. Today's banquet in the Hall of Wuda was actually a late welcome banquet for the Crown Prince and the Crown Princess. Those who could be present were generally officials of the third rank and above and their families. Of course, martial arts were popular in the Divine Land. People from the 6 aristocratic families and several major sects were also invited. These clans were naturally great aristocratic families that could hold their own in the outside world. His Majesty has arrived. Everyone stood up and bowed in the direction of the door, saluting in unison. Your Majesty. Rise. The great emperor was in a good mood today. He just received news that the little brat and his wife had a quarrel with the Mu family and returned to the palace. State Preceptor is here. Before everyone could sit down, they hurriedly faced the door and bowed again. State Preceptor. A man slowly walked in through the door. His face was very handsome, and there was a hint of a smile between his eyebrows. He looked like a flowing wind and a swimming dragon. His entire person was like a venerable bathed in holy light. He looked to be in his early 20s, but everyone knew that the state preceptor looked like this decades ago. No one knew how old the state preceptor was. However, his transcendent deity realm cultivation was still very admirable and feared. No need to be so courteous. The state preceptor spoke gently with a smile on his face. Sit down. The great emperor's mood was really good. There was even a smile on his face. The officials couldn't help but be shocked, thinking about it. Nothing good happened today to make the great emperor so happy. Family head Mu. Just as everyone's buttocks touched the stool, they heard the great emperor laugh and make things difficult for them. I heard you chased my son back. Mu Jingfeng's lips twitched as he hurriedly stood up. This Mu is terrified. The great emperor's handsome face stiffened. Could it be that because of the ownership of the crown princess's mother's dowry, you have a grudge against the crown prince and the crown princess? The family head of the medical family, the Dou family, who had always been at odds with the Mu family, couldn't help but laugh unkindly. Family head Mu, you're too petty. It's natural for the crown princess to be ordered to collect debts. You actually chased the young couple back to the palace. That's too much. Everyone's eyebrows twitched silently. Family head Dou, can you be more shameless? Mu Jingfeng's face darkened. Just as he was about to refute, he heard a voice outside the door. Crown Prince, the Crown Princess has arrived. Chapter 27-23. Everyone looked up at the same time. Both of them were dressed in black formal attire, with a circle of golden silk and red thread around the sleeves and corners of their robes. The Crown Prince's posture was tall and straight. The Crown Princess's icy appearance was elegant and natural. The moment these two entered the main hall, they immediately stole everyone's attention. Even the sound of everyone's breathing subconsciously became softer as they stared unblinkingly at the two of them. Sitting on his throne, the emperor inexplicably felt a little stifled as he watched the scene before him. Because, regardless of whether he admitted it or not, these two little brats actually looked so compatible. It was as if time had returned to the past. He actually seemed to see his flawlessness behind them. The emperor's gaze softened slightly. At the same time, the gazes of the various aristocratic families' patriarchs, various officials, madams, and noble ladies also landed on the couple in the middle of the hall. There were truly some who were envious, some who were jealous, some who were emotional, and some who were praising them. Amidst these gazes, Arbor only felt a scorching gaze land on her. She reflexively turned her head and met a pair of cold and heavy eyes the moment she looked up. Within those gloomy eyes, a faint green light flashed and disappeared, immediately causing her heart to feel slightly cold. More than that, a sliver of fear coiled around her heart like a venomous snake. Feeling the warmth in her hand, Arbor looked up and saw Prince Mo looking down and smiling at her. Only then did the uneasiness in her heart subside a little. But heaven knew that in that instant, she was shrieking and cursing in her heart, not dead. Not dead, not dead. That guy Omega Kotoku really didn't die. The body she shot to death on Seikong planet was nothing more than an unremarkable clone of that man. It would be a lie to say that she wasn't disappointed. The second young master naturally also saw the shock and disgust hidden in the little fellow's eyes, and a faint anger involuntarily surfaced in his heart. What was going on? It shouldn't be like this. She shouldn't be disgusted with him. The second young master didn't know why, but a voice kept echoing in his heart like a curse. She should be his. She was his. How could she look at him with such a hateful gaze? How could that be? Arbor's cold eyes were almost spewing out flames of anger. This Omega Kotoku, the way he looked at her now was the same as in her previous life, filled with a strong perverted possessiveness. It wasn't her imagination. This was true. Could it be that this pervert wanted to find a cage and lock her up again? At the thought of this, Jojo could not help but feel as if the blood in his body had frozen. His entire body was slightly stiff. She wanted to gouge his eyes out. She wouldn't allow this man to look at her like that again. Not allowed. The little fellow clenched his fists fiercely, looking like he was about to go berserk. Mo Lien immediately felt that there was something wrong with the little fellow's mood. She immediately reached out to hold the little thing's little hand and squeezed her palm to comfort her. Jojo. Arbor's nearly uncontrollable violent aura paused slightly, and he raised his head to glance at the crown prince with his large, watery eyes. His aura calmed down inch by inch, but his eyes looked as if they were about to be quenched with poison as he stared coldly at the young master Omega Kotoku. The eldest young master beside him saw that the situation wasn't right and hurriedly raised his hand to tug at his second brother. He coughed lightly and said, "Second brother, Jojo doesn't like you very much." Chapter 27-24. A middle-aged man with a heavy aura sitting next to the two looked up, and an intimidating aura abruptly burst forth from his body. That aura rushed straight for the crown princess, but before it could reach her, it was brushed away by a force emitted from the emperor's hand. Family head Qin, why are you suddenly making things difficult for the crown princess? The emperor's expression didn't change as he asked indifferently. Qin Hong laughed heartily, which clearly didn't match the gloomy expression he was looking at the crown princess with. This old man made a slip of the hand. "Please forgive me, your majesty." Made a slip of the hand. Who are you trying to fool? Just now, that powerful force was clearly aimed at the crown prince consort. If the emperor hadn't intercepted it, the crown princess might have already collapsed to the ground. Seikong Star Battle Squad has arrived. The eunuch's abrupt voice broke the slightly awkward atmosphere. Everyone's mouths couldn't help but twitch, and they asked each other with their gazes, "Who is this Seikong Star Battle Squad? Why haven't we heard of them before?" They felt that it wasn't too likely that nameless mercenary teams would be invited to such a formal palace banquet, right? Little Fatty led his team members in valiantly and spiritedly. He looked straight ahead at the emperor on the throne and bowed in greeting. "Greetings, your majesty." The emperor naturally knew that the crown prince had invited several friends to attend the banquet. When he saw this, he also nodded amiably at them and pointed to the seats on the side, indicating for them to take their seats. Being led by Crown Prince Mo, the young crown prince consort was currently heading to the first seat below the emperor's. She suddenly paused and turned to look at family head Mu, whose face had darkened. The young crown princess seemed to have thought of something, and she turned around and called out to the air, "Hui Feng." Huifeng's figure flashed, and he appeared in front of her like a ghost. He said with a grin, "What orders does the crown princess have? Has concubine sure been beaten to death?" Everyone naturally heard the young crown prince consort's words clearly, and their mouths couldn't help but twitch. Hui Feng hastily replied, "This concubine sure has a life-saving pill. I swallowed it before I was beaten." His legs were crippled, but his life was saved. "Not dead?" Arbor asked in surprise. "No." Hui Feng lowered his head. "Oh." The little crown princess didn't say anything else. She pulled the crown prince to her seat. Hui Feng silently regretted his incompetence. He wondered if the deranged crown prince would throw him into intensive training for a month because of this matter when he passed by family head Mu and Madame Mu. Arbor glanced at them coldly from the corner of his eyes. He didn't say a word to them and directly walked over with the crown prince. Everyone present, therefore, very intuitively felt that the crown princess and the Mu family's father and daughter were like enemies. Mu Jingfeng was so livid that his face turned green. He felt that he had completely lost face because of this Jinx's daughter. Qi Xianxian sat in front of the table, her eyes darting around as she curiously sized up family head Mu. She had heard a lot of gossip in the past few hours, and she felt that each and every one of them was incomparably explosive. Sigh, she didn't expect that she would miss out on so many exciting things after being in closed-door cultivation for so many days. It simply made her wring her hands. Qi Xianxian secretly clenched her fists and couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Many things happened to Jojo, but she wasn't able to participate in them in time. Now that she thought about it, it was truly a huge pity. Chapter 27-25. After the two of them sat down, their gazes naturally met with the esteemed state preceptor sitting across from them. This esteemed state preceptor, whose entire body seemed to be bathed in holy light, smiled and nodded at the two of them, appearing to be an extremely gentle person. The young couple looked at each other, and both of them bowed to the imperial preceptor who enjoyed quite a high reputation. Arbor sank into contemplation and felt family head Qin's icy gaze land on her from time to time. She didn't remember offending this family head Qin before. If there was any enmity, it was probably the grudge of her killing his son once. Arbor recalled that day when she condensed water into ice and formed an ice arrow that pierced through Omega Kotoku's chest. All of a sudden, it was as if his soul had been shattered, and he turned into a fragmented shadow. This shouldn't be his original body. Arbor took a deep breath and suppressed the raging fury in her heart. This person's gaze just now made her feel extremely uncomfortable. Madame Goen has arrived. Arbor felt a slight warmth in her palm, and she looked up at the crown prince's inquiring gaze. She shook her head slightly at him to indicate that she was fine. She turned around and looked at the group that entered through the door. Her graceful figure was wrapped in a crisp red brocade, and her makeup was very exquisite. She heard that this Madame Goen was in her early 50s, but her dressing was still as beautiful as a young girl's. "Greetings, Your Majesty." Madame Goen's voice could practically seep into one's bones when she spoke. The Emperor nodded at her with an indifferent expression, indicating for her to take a seat. Madame Goen pursed her lips in a smile and slowly walked towards Arbor and her husband. When she passed by the Qin estate's table, which was the head of the 6 great patrician families, her gaze intentionally or unintentionally glanced behind and landed on the livid 5th young Master Qin, throwing him a coquettish glance. 5th young Master Qin nearly vomited, looking as if he had eaten a fly and feeling extremely disgusted. "Crown Prince, Crown Princess." Madame Goen stopped in front of the young couple's table. The Crown Prince cast her an indifferent glance and nodded slightly. "Madame Goen. Crown Prince calls our country's Madaman, isn't it too much of an outsider?" Madaman said with a smile, as if there was no enmity between the two people. "I'm your mother's older sister." The Crown Prince and Crown Princess can just call me Aunt. I'm not familiar with you. The little Crown Princess replied coldly. She was currently in a bad mood, so how could she be willing to waste her breath on this woman? Madame Gua's face stiffened. She couldn't believe that the little Crown Princess in front of her wouldn't give her any face. This was in front of everyone, right under the eyes of the great emperor, yet he dared to be so disrespectful to her aunt. Wasn't he too arrogant? Gua's face darkened. He looked coldly at the little Crown Princess and thought, you refused a toast only to drink a forfeit. I didn't want to make things difficult for you at this time. But now, if you don't know how to appreciate favors, then you'll be unlucky to make a fool of yourself in front of everyone. When Madame Gowan thought of this, the smile on her face deepened. She stared at the young Crown Prince Consort with a smile and said in a soft voice, Crown Prince Consort, I heard that you have a 3-trial agreement with the Emperor. You haven't passed the 3rd trial yet, right? The little Crown Princess glanced at her coldly. Can you not pinch your throat when you speak? It's as unpleasant as a rooster's crow. This Crown Princess isn't a man and doesn't need you to be so pretentious. Pfft. Chapter 27-26. One of the officials spat out a mouthful of wine, and a few more people in the hall pretended to cough to cover up their laughter. You! Madame Gowan's face turned green with anger. This Crown Princess was too straightforward. It was infuriating. She had interacted with all kinds of people in the past 50 years, but she had never seen such an infuriating young lady. Good. I wanted to give you some face, but I didn't want you to lose too badly. Since that's the case, there's no need to give her any face at all. Madame Gowan thought to herself with a cold face. Gowan. The Emperor frowned and called out to her unhappily. The 3 questions could have been tested privately. It wasn't appropriate to bring it up in today's setting. If the Crown Princess won, the Emperor would feel like he had been slapped in the face in public. If the Crown Princess lost, his son would definitely not give him face. In any case, the Emperor felt that it was inappropriate no matter what. Madame Gowan brought up the test regardless of the timing, and the Emperor was somewhat dissatisfied with her. However, Madame Gowan was already in a difficult position. She had already mentioned the 3 questions. Could it be that she could scram back to her seat now and ignore what she said earlier? Obviously not. She could only ignore the Emperor's oppressive gaze and brace herself to continue. Crown Prince Consort, do you dare to accept the 3rd question in front of everyone? With a cold expression, the young Crown Prince Consort sized her up and said bluntly, how big of a face do you think you have? You dare to make me accept your test? Who do you think you are? Everyone, the imperial censors, chuckled in their hearts. Thinking back to that time in the imperial study, the young Crown Princess even dared to rebuke the Emperor, let alone a mere Madame Gowan. She really didn't know what was good for her. Gowan, back down. The Emperor couldn't help but say. He really couldn't bear to see Gowan continue to be stupid. Madame Gowan turned and looked at the Emperor with grievance. She bowed and said, Your Majesty, Gowan heard that Your Majesty still can't make up your mind about the 3rd question. Gowan is just being kind and wants to share Your Majesty's burden. The Emperor wanted to slap this woman to death. Share your worries, my ass. We didn't say that we were going to test the Crown Princess now. Today's banquet was to welcome the Crown Prince and the Crown Princess, as well as to introduce them to the ministers and aristocratic families. There was no need to test the Crown Princess on such an occasion. But now that the National Security Bureau had brought it up in public, it was really difficult to back down. I still need to think about the questions. The great Emperor braced himself and tried to shirk the responsibility. Unexpectedly, Madam of the National Security Agency, who usually knew how to read people's expressions and was sophisticated and tactful, had to compete with the Crown Princess today. As if she didn't understand the emperor at all, Madame Gohan nodded and said, Gohan has a good idea here. As everyone knows, the National Security Agency is an expert in perfumery. If the Crown Princess can crack the fragrance created by the National Security Agency within 2 hours, then it will be considered that the Crown Princess has passed this test. What do you think, Your Majesty? Madame Gohan suggested with a smile, as if she really wanted to help the great emperor solve his problems. Her face showed some sincerity. We don't think so. Although he secretly wanted the young Crown Prince Consort to lose a match, that was only in private. How could he want his own son to lose face in public because the Crown Princess lost the competition? The Emperor's warning gaze landed on Madame Gohan's face. Chapter 27:27. The faint pressure in those eyes made Madame Gohan slightly apprehensive. She secretly cursed. She wanted to slap the young couple's faces so much that she completely forgot about the Emperor. But now, the words had already been spoken, and it was hard to take them back. She couldn't admit defeat, or else it would be slapping her own face. She could only brace herself and say, Does the Crown Princess dare to challenge me? The fragrance made by Gohan might cause hallucinations, but it might also make one's body feel comfortable or uncomfortable. If the little Crown Princess couldn't dispel this fragrance, it was very likely that she would make a fool of herself in public. Madame Gohan couldn't help but feel smug. After saying that, she smiled and looked at the little Crown Princess, waiting for her to fall into her trap with certainty. Young people, after all, were full of youthful vigor. They definitely wouldn't be able to withstand her provocation. Unexpectedly, the little Crown Princess only glanced at her indifferently. You want me to smell the fragrance and dispel it? Must I do as you say? On what basis? You're quite shameless, daring to chirp in front of me. Scram! Everyone was instantly speechless. These words were really straightforward. Just by looking at Madame Gohan's expression, one could tell that she was about to explode from anger. On the side, Family Head Do swept a glance at the juniors sitting behind him, and his gaze landed on 2 outstanding youths. He suddenly thought of something and asked in a low voice, Fengmian, Fanghua, you two are also from Seacone Planet. Did you know the Crown Princess in the past? Family Head Do felt that he had truly discovered the truth. Looking at the 2 children from the Branch family who looked like they had eaten dirt, they must have suffered a lot in the hands of the little Crown Princess in the past. Do Fengmian couldn't help but nod weakly, thinking, luckily, Feng Qi and Feng Yao are in closed-door cultivation and didn't come over. Otherwise, if they saw the little Crown Princess, they might start cursing again. Family Head Do looked doubtfully at Do Fengmian and her brother and asked a bit nosily, You know that Seacone Planet battle team too? We don't. Do Fanghua said indifferently. Then, she didn't even need to guess and said, the Crown Princess was probably too lazy to think about the name of this team and casually came up with it. Family Head Do, in that case, the little Crown Princess was indeed a carefree person. Cough. Family Head Do still wanted to talk to the 2 Branch family children, but seeing that they didn't look happy, he couldn't help but shut his mouth. She wasn't even in the mood to chat. Even if he wanted to, he couldn't at this moment. The Do brothers were silently cursing in their hearts. Who the hell wants to chat with you? Of all things to chat about, the little Crown Princess, there's no point in chatting. Whoever wanted to mess with the Crown Princess could do so. It had nothing to do with the brothers anyway. Gohan, the great emperor, said impatiently. Sit down. Madame Gohan clenched her fists tightly. Just as she was feeling tired of fighting alone, a bright female voice came from behind her. The Crown Princess doesn't dare to accept Madame Gohan's generous offer. What does this mean? Zhongli Jiwei said with a smile, Is the Crown Princess afraid to fight? The young Crown Princess's gaze swept over Zhongli Jiwei's face, then turned back to silently look at the Crown Prince. Prince Mo. He instantly understood the young crown princess's meaning. It's your fault. The Zhongli family's girl made things difficult for Jojo because of you. This person was like a dead dog, always biting onto her and not letting go. Annoying. Chow Chow thought about it for a moment and decided to kill the annoying fly. Chapter 27-28. You want to set the exam questions on behalf of His Majesty. Arbor coldly looks at Zhongli Jiwei, or you. She looks at Madame Goen. Both of them don't dare to answer casually. What do you mean by setting the exam questions on behalf of His Majesty? How can they have such great ability to do something on behalf of His Majesty? Xiao Mu stood up. For a moment, all the sounds in the main hall inexplicably disappeared. The great emperor sits upright on the throne. When he sees the little crown princess stand up and walk to the center of the hall, the corners of his eyes can't help but twitch. Very strangely, he actually feels that something very tragic is about to happen, royal father. The young crown prince consort's shout caused everyone to silently lower their heads and inwardly convulse with laughter. Cough, you say it. The great emperor feels that he still needs to explain, so he says, the matter of the exam questions was not leaked by us. It must be the people below who didn't keep their mouths shut and spread this news to the Goen. However, there are many people in the palace, so it's understandable. Prince Kong chokes. He pretends to pick up the teacup and takes a sip, suppressing the trace of laughter in his eyes. His Majesty is actually a bit timid in front of the little crown princess. It's said that His Majesty summoned the little crown princess before and originally wanted to give her 3 exam questions to make things difficult for her. In the end, he was slapped in the face by the little crown princess. She solved the 2 questions with unusual ease, so the great emperor left the 3rd exam question. The great emperor probably still doesn't know the little crown princess's identity as a talisman master and alchemist. She doesn't need to rely on her family. She can defeat all the noble ladies of the imperial capital's aristocratic families with her own strength. Prince Kong decides to sit and watch the situation unfold. Arbor looks up at the great emperor, since Madame Goen wants to overstep her authority and test me on behalf of imperial father. She should pay the corresponding price, right? The great emperor subconsciously blinks, trying hard to understand the little crown princess's meaning. She tested me to smell the fragrance, so I have to test her and let her smell my fragrance. The little crown princess says with a serious face, this is called politeness demands reciprocity. Was this the meaning of reciprocity? Everyone thought with a confused expression. You know how to mix incense too. The little crown princess shook her head solemnly. The great emperor was speechless. Then why did you let them smell the fragrance? It doesn't matter if I know how to make perfume or not, I just want to smell my fragrance. The great emperor coughed lightly and turned to look at Madame Goen. Goen, do you agree to the little crown princess request? Why not? Madame Goen was arrogant on the surface, but she was laughing crazily in her heart. Was this crown princess stupid? She actually wanted to compete with her in perfumery. Ahahaha. Then, she would let her have a taste of her power as the Madam of the National Security Agency. Goen flipped his hand and took out a small purple gold cauldron from his inner world. Arbor stared at the furnace in her hand and frowned slightly. It turned out that the cauldron used to cure His Majesty's head-wind disease was given by this woman. Treating the symptoms but not the root of the problem was useless. Wait. Prince Amos suddenly said, this crown prince will bet 50 million spirit coins on my wife winning. Everyone immediately burst out laughing. Your Highness the Crown Prince, you're too funny. Where's your aloofness? The funniest thing was that Prince Kong, who usually didn't smile, suddenly slapped the table and stood up, saying, this prince will bet 30 million on the crown princess winning. The imperial censors didn't want to ridicule him anymore. In the hall, the crown prince took the lead to bet, and Prince Kong immediately followed suit. Prince Giantpain immediately went up against the crown prince, betting 10 million spirit coins on Madame Gohan winning. Chapter 27-29. Dear members of the royal family, can you be any more ridiculous? Can't you all lead a good start? The great emperor waited for everyone to finish placing their bets before he secretly called Eunuch Hu, who was waiting at the side, to secretly take out 30 million spirit coins and bet all of it on his son. Hu Dequan wiped his sweat and put on a hopeless expression. He held the spirit coins and ran to the crown prince's side to place his bets. Everyone placed their bets in full swing. Eunuch Hu led a group of young eunuchs and counted the number of spirit coins placed by both sides with a dumbfounded expression. He didn't know if he didn't count, but after counting, he got a shock. Everyone present was indeed super rich. It was no wonder. If these people weren't the royal relatives, third-rank officials and above, then they were the heads of various aristocratic families and sections. The young masters and young misses were also all rich goods. Both sides bet as high as 800 million. It was just that the bet on Madame Gua's side was 3 times that of the young crown princess side. By the time the young eunuchs finished counting the bets, an hour had already passed. All the courtiers didn't eat or drink anymore. They all crowded around Eunuch Hu to see the amount they calculated. Prince Kong slapped his thigh and laughed out loud. My bet took up about 15% of the total bets. After winning later, I'll get at least 60 million from the other side. Ha 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 ha. Ha, just thinking about it made him so happy that he couldn't close his mouth. Profit, profit, profit. Everyone's mouth twitched. Prince Giantpain at the side couldn't help but say in a low muffled voice, Big brother, you're saying it as if the crown princess will definitely win. Prince Kong glanced at his youngest brother. That's right. I'm especially confident in the crown princess. I want to raise the stakes. A resounding voice suddenly drowned out everyone's voices. Everyone turned to look. It was Prince Giantpain, Mo Kuan. They couldn't help but subconsciously wipe the sweat on their foreheads. Prince Giantpain took out a spirit coin card and threw it in front of Hu Dequan. Add 20 million. Prince Giantpain only felt his eyelids twitch violently. This son of a bitch, he had already bet 5 million just now. Adding 20 million now, wouldn't it be 2,500? This was too exaggerated. He had invested all of his life in this. The more you bet, the more you win. Prince Giantpain arrogantly raised his chin and snorted. I bet on the crown princess to win. Everyone was stunned. This crown prince of Giantpain is really here to be funny. He had placed his bets on both sides. Although he did not seem to be on good terms with the crown princess, deep down, he actually felt that the crown princess would win. Hence, he placed a huge bet on the crown princess. Even Prince Mo couldn't help but secretly twitch his eyebrows and raise his hand to rub his forehead. Eunuch Hu shouted, all right, all right. Princes, clan heads, and lords, please place your bets and leave. All right. It's over. You can't raise the stakes anymore. Eunuch Hu shouted. The great emperor couldn't help but have a headache. His personal eunuch had fucking become a gambler. On the crown princess side, she had more than 200 million in her capital pool. The crown prince had 5,000, Prince Kong had 3,000, Prince Giantpain and the Dou family had 2,000 each. Qi Xianxian and the rest had jointly placed 40 million, while the great emperor, the state preceptor, and the Qin estate had placed their bets. Several imperial censors, Prime Minister Gao, and the other lords had placed their bets for fun and only took up a small portion. In total, there were only a few dozen people on the crown princess side who placed their bets. Everyone else had all placed their bets on Madame Gowan to win. After all, Madame Gowan was really skilled at making incense. No one wanted to lose money. In any case, they were familiar with Madame Gowan. As for the Crown Princess, they didn't know how capable she was. Chapter 27:30. Madame Gowan reveals a faint smile, glancing at the Crown Princess and saying, "Crown Princess, I'm sorry, but there are more people buying here. If it were someone else, they would really be embarrassed." Unexpectedly, this little Crown Princess looks at her expressionlessly. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. The fewer people buying, the more money we get. Everyone can't help but be speechless. Crown Princess, you should be a bit more modest. You speak as if this pool is all your money. Prince Kong laughs loudly. That's reasonable, that's reasonable. Madame Gowan, who placed a bet of 90 million, moderately maintains a smile on her face, but in reality, she wants to pinch the little guy in front of her to death. She's not afraid of the wind spraining her tongue. Then Crown Princess needs to be careful. Madame Gowan sneers, putting the little purple gold cauldron on the table at the side. Madame Gowan fans the little cauldron with a coquettish smile on her face. She takes out a small jade box from her bosom, using her fingernails to pick out a bit of creamy paste, and flicking it into the little cauldron. She dips her hands into the basin at the side, then takes out 2 other jade boxes the size of rouge boxes. She takes out some creamy paste from each box, and puts it into a clean little bowl. She uses the spring water from the bottle to pour it into the bowl, and evenly stirs it with her fingers. As she does these things, Arbor looks at her expressionlessly from the side. Then she says, "Hurry up." The corners of Family Head Dough's eyes twitch, and he almost bursts out laughing. Why does the little Crown Princess look more and more funny the more he looks? Mo Lien is very helpless. She steps forward a few steps and holds the little guy's hand, muttering, "Jojo, this is normal speed, don't use your abnormal pill refining speed to measure others' awe." The little guy blinks, and silently shuts up. It's just that the more he looks at this person, the more sluggish her movements become. After the time it takes to burn a stick of incense, she's still grinding the creamy paste in the little bowl. He watches her take out a small porcelain jar again, and use a small pestle to stir the powder inside. Arbor can't help but roll her eyes. More than an hour later, Arbor was about to doze off in her seat. Finally, she heard Madame Gowan calling her, "Crown Princess, you can come up and smell it." It was really not easy. It had been almost 2 hours, and this madam of the National Security Agency had only finished her perfume. The little fellow couldn't help but feel energized. He blocked the Crown Prince, Qi Xianxian, and the others behind him and quickly walked up to the madam, who had a slightly strange expression on her face. She looked like she was waiting for a good show, as if she was sure that Jojo would fall for it. Arbor's stoic face darkened. He approached the small purple gold cauldron and sniffed it twice. It was a sickeningly sweet smell. "Your taste is too sweet," the little Crown Princess criticized. "Are you trying to kill me?" Madame Gowan's beautiful face turned sour. She didn't want to talk to this infuriating little guy. Anyway, she was just waiting to see her make a fool of herself. However, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 10 minutes passed, and the little Crown Princess looked at her expressionlessly. You come closer, and sniff more." It must be because the fragrance wasn't enough. The little Crown Princess followed her instructions and sniffed a few more times. After a few minutes, there still wasn't any reaction. Madame Gowan became anxious. She held the cauldron and said to the Crown Princess, You sniff more. It's useless even if I drink it, it's useless to me." The little Crown Princess said impatiently. "All right, it's your turn to sniff." She didn't seem to be mixing the perfume, but just lightly flicked her little sleeve. A faint smell, like smoke, entered Madame Gowan's nose. Chapter 27:31. Mrs. Gowan was flabbergasted. Her face stiffened as she stood there for a long while. Only then did she carefully size up the young crown princess. Her mind was clear, her eyes were bright, and there were no symptoms of the hallucinogenic fragrance. How could this be? That was her newly developed hallucinogenic fragrance with indescribable effects. But. She asked the crown princess to come closer to smell it, and the crown princess was quite cooperative. After smelling it for a long time, there was really no reaction at all. What was going on? Could it be that she had mixed the fragrance incorrectly? Mrs. Gowan was about to go closer to smell it when she heard the young crown princess say impatiently, "Okay, it's your turn to smell it." She didn't seem to have mixed any fragrances, but with a light flick of her sleeve, a very faint fragrance blended into her breath. Mrs. Gowan's expression changed slightly, and she quickly and secretly blocked her 5 senses. She couldn't help but feel a little proud. After all, the crown princess was young and didn't know how to be flexible. As long as she sealed her 5 senses, wouldn't she be able to completely block out that fragrance? Strange, her head felt a little dizzy. Mrs. Gowan instantly felt that something was wrong. She heard the young crown princess say coldly, "It's useless even if you seal your 5 senses. Her poisonous fog, as long as it came into contact with a person's skin, it would be pervasive." Hallucinogenic, huh? Arbor smiled coldly. This woman who was indulging in the wildest fantasies actually wanted to humiliate her in front of everyone. Where exactly did she get the confidence to think that Lord Chow Chow would fall for such a low-level trick like hers? Arbor sneered at Mrs. Gowan, then returned to her seat with a flick of her sleeve. Seeing her return, Prince Mo reached out to hold her little hand and asked curiously, "What's in that smoke?" Because at this moment, Mrs. Gowan's face was already abnormally red. Looking at her dazed expression, it was a little painful to the eyes. "Hallucinatory," Arbor snorted and said with a look of disgust, "Give her a hazy and hallucinatory dream." However, looking at her lecherous smile, he knew what kind of dream this was. Madame Gowan had already started her performance. First, she let out a short whimper, followed by the madam falling to the ground in front of everyone. Her wrist trembled slightly as she unbuttoned her gown, and an indescribable sound came out of her mouth. Everyone looked in shock at the extraordinary performance of the madam of the National Security Agency in the center of the hall. They couldn't believe their eyes. The old censors' faces turned red. They flicked their sleeves and scolded angrily, "What an eyesore! Preposterous! Hurry up and pull her up. Rude, rude." The great emperor sat on his throne. His eyelids had been twitching non-stop since just now. Seeing Madame Guo's current state, he hurriedly ordered Hu Dequan beside him, "Get someone to send her back to her residence." Madame Gowan let out an infatuated chuckle. At this time, she had completely sunk into that hallucinatory dream. Sitting in the Qin family seat, 5th young Master Qin's hair stood on end as he looked at this wanton woman. He felt a stifling feeling in his chest, and he wanted to find a place to spit it out. "Mommy, what exactly is she dreaming of? Her expression is so disgusting." Qi Xianxian rubbed the goosebumps on her arms and couldn't help but shudder, revealing a disgusted expression. Chapter 27:32. It must be a wet dream. Sitting next to her, Ma Ta couldn't help but smile vulgarly. Qi Xianxian turned to glare at him. "Shameless. Hey, how am I the shameless one?" Ma Ta rubbed his chin and muttered, "It's this madam who's shameless. That shameless madam wasn't wearing 2 layers of clothing to begin with." Now that her gown was taken off, half of her fragrant shoulder was revealed. Not only did she mutter, she even started to touch herself. The extent of her actions was simply unbearable to watch. "Young Sir Zither, don't go," Madame Gowan murmured. Everyone could clearly hear the words, "Young Sir Zither," and their expressions instantly changed unpredictably. The faces of the Qin family members present all darkened. Fifth young Sir Zither even glared fiercely in young Crown Princess's direction. Arbor was expressionless. Sir Jojo only gave her a fantastical dream to let her dream of what she wanted the most. As for what she dreamed of, how she would behave, and how much she would protrude, that wasn't something that Sir Jojo could control, all right? Why was he glaring at her? Prince Mo couldn't help but shudder and lean closer to his wifey. Sensing his aura nearing, the young Crown Princess subconsciously rubbed the back of his hand and said in all seriousness, "Don't be afraid, I will protect you." Prince Mo couldn't help but be caught between laughter and tears. Currently, everyone present was actually rather curious about what wet dream Madame Gowan was having. Judging from her licentious appearance, it seemed like she wasn't just messing around with one young Sir Zither. No wonder the expressions of the young Sir Zithers became increasingly dark. Pfft, ha 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 ha. Very abruptly, a young Sir's laughter attracted everyone's attention. Prince Mo whispered in his wifey's ear, "Long family member." Arbor looked coldly at that young Sir Zither. This person was the second son of Patriarch Long Shoshin, Long Chang. That day in Arbor's despondent pavilion, he had actually seen him when he blew up the silk pants Shi Jin Bao and the others into the sky. It was just that when she glanced at people, she would rarely deliberately remember a few cats and dogs, so naturally, she had no impression of Long Chang at this moment. The Crown Prince of Jianpain, Mo Kuan, looked at Long Chang in astonishment. He thought that after that day at the frustrated pavilion, these guys would at least have some brains, but it seemed that they didn't. There were so many people present. Which one of them wasn't secretly laughing? Only Long Chang actually laughed out loud. "Can't you see that the great emperor's expression is extremely ugly?" Sure enough, in the next second, the great emperor's gaze swept coldly towards Long Chang. In any case, this madam of the Ministry of State Security was the Empress's elder sister in name. Making a fool of herself in front of the Empress was really not a dignified matter. "Hurry up and send my wife back to her residence," the great emperor said coldly. Hu Dequan broke out in a cold sweat. He hurriedly ordered 2 palace maids to go forward and pull the woman who was lying on the ground. He. The woman continuously laughed in a manner that made one's hair stand on end. The 2 palace maids braced themselves and came forward with red faces to pull her. This madam couldn't resist giggling. She grabbed one of the palace maids with one hand and repeatedly rubbed her body against the other, muttering, Qin Lang, as she moved to take off that palace maid's clothes. The Qin estate's patriarch Qin Hong's expression was frighteningly unsightly. Although eldest young Sir Qin and young Sir Omega Kotoku's expressions were also unsightly, they weren't like 5th Qin, who seemed to be trembling all over. Chapter 2733. 5th young Master Qin simply wanted to scream out loud. He was too afraid of hearing his name from Madame Gowan's mouth. This made him feel like he wouldn't be able to live on any longer. Seeing his younger brother in such a bad state, the eldest young master promptly reached out to grab him. "Xiao, do you want to go back first?" How could 5th young Master Qin dare to budge? If he walked out now, what if that crazy woman hugged him halfway? His handsome face was as pale as snow, and his hands on his knees involuntarily started trembling slightly. Arbor glanced at that 5th young master and abruptly jumped up, stomping back to Madame Gowan's side. That woman was currently crazily tugging at a royal maid's clothes, pushing that trembling royal maid to the ground and stepping on her. This action was simply unbearable to look at. She was thinking that the royal maid was a certain Zither young master, and pushed her down. Looking at her actions, it seemed like she didn't just push down one zither young master. Everyone's expressions were somewhat thought-provoking as they circled around the three zither young masters. It couldn't be, some kind of activity, right? The old Imperial censors were so angry that their faces turned white, and they kept muttering, shameless. Shameless. Deranged. Simply lacking in etiquette. At this time, the young crown princess had already run in front of Madame Gowan. Just as everyone was condemning her, they saw the little fellow nimbly slash down at Madame Gowan's neck with a blade in one hand. Madame Gowan's head immediately tilted, and all of her movements came to a screeching halt. She fell on that royal maid, firmly pressing her down. Ah, ah. That royal maid cried out involuntarily, her face pale from fright. Her clothes had already been completely disfigured by Madame Gowan, and she covered her face in shame as she sobbed. Arbor kicked Madame Gowan to the side without any hesitation. She took out an outer robe from her inner world and draped it over that disheveled royal maid, pulling her up. That royal maid cried as she saluted her gratefully. Clutching the outer robe draped over her body, she hastily retreated. Deranged. The young crown princess angrily rebuked. Everyone, the great emperor's lips twitched as he resisted the urge to beat up a child. The corners of everyone's eyes twitched visibly. The little crown princess said expressionlessly, "I won." The great emperor couldn't help but raise his hand to support his forehead. He waved his hand weakly and said, "Send Madame back to her residence. Send Madame back to her residence." Hu Dequan hurriedly called for a few stronger guards to come in and lift up the national security madam, whose clothes were almost completely stripped, revealing a large part of her snow-white body, and hurriedly left the main hall. For a moment the atmosphere fell silent. Everyone held their breaths, not even daring to breathe. He felt that His Majesty was probably not in a good mood right now, Hu Dequan. Hu Dequan quivered and rushed to the front of the little crown princess. He bowed respectfully and said, "Yes, crown princess." The great emperor felt his teeth ache. When his personal eunuch saw the little crown princess, he was like a mouse that saw a cat. He was extremely obedient. "Let's split the money we won. If they don't have enough spirit coins, let them sign the debt receipt." "Yes." Hu Dequan wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and hurriedly ran to settle the bet. In this grand gamble, His Highness the Crown Prince had bet 50 million spirit coins, and now he had netted back more than 100 million. Chapter 2734. This is truly insane, everyone thought to themselves. Thus, the lords who had bet on Madame Gua's victory all cried to the heavens and wiped away their tears as they watched the salary that they had scrimped and saved for several years all be squeezed dry by the crown princess side. The funniest one was the Duke of Giantpain. He should have joined in the crying and wiping away tears as well. However, the Duke of Giantpain's heir added 20 million at the last moment. Not only did the father and son not lose anything, but they also inexplicably earned 20 million after deducting their capital. The Duke of Giantpain finally found his son much more pleasing to the eye. He rubbed his son's dog head and nodded with rare affection. "You did well." The one who suffered the most was probably the second miss of the Zhongli residence, Zhongli Jiwei. After Madame Gua's 90 million bet, the second miss of the Zhongli family had bet 60 million, but it had all gone down the drain. The Long family members couldn't laugh at this moment either. They had bet quite a bit as well, 30 million spirit coins. They had thought that they would be able to earn some back, but now they had lost all of it. It was simply infuriating. Long Chang frowned and suddenly stood up to call out loudly, "Everyone, is this the end of the competition?" Everyone looked at him as if they were looking at an idiot. What else could they do other than end it? Madame Gua had already been carried off the stage, what else could they do? Our bet just now was to smell the fragrance and dispel it, right? Was it incense that the Crown Princess sprayed on Madame Gua? Why does it look like fog when I look at it? It looks like poisonous fog. Long Chang's words woke everyone up from their dreams. Long Shoshin, the head of the Long family, quickly jumped up and called out, "That's right, that's right. What the Crown Princess gave Madame Gua wasn't incense at all. Why don't you smell it?" Arbor raised his little hand. The group of Long family members immediately took a step back and stared at her warily. What a joke. Madame Gohan was at the 12th level of the spirit realm at the very least. Add to that the fact that she usually smelled and distinguished fragrances, she was very familiar with fragrances. If even she could fall for the young Crown Prince Consort's trick like this, there was no need to mention them. "Crown Princess, please be careful." Patriarch Long's face darkened as he bellowed. Long Chang giggled at the young Crown Prince Consort. "Heh heh, cousin, we're all one family. Why do you have to go so overboard?" When Long Chang said this, everyone remembered. Wasn't she his cousin? The little Crown Princess's mother, Long Chuyun, was also a member of the Long family. Arbor sneered and looked at Long Chang. "Do you know where the fool who called me cousin last time is now?" Her voice was icy cold, and her gaze was as sharp as a blade, stabbing over with a swoosh. Seeing this, Patriarch Long couldn't help but be stunned. He subconsciously reached out to grab his son's wrist and pulled him back. "What are you doing?" Long Shoshin angrily rebuked. Boom! Xiao Mu kicked over, directly sending the short table in front of him flying into the air and charging straight for Long Chang's chest. Long Shoshin had been on guard against her at the time. Now that he saw that she had indeed acted so mercilessly, his eyelids twitched involuntarily. He hurriedly grabbed his son and dodged. Bam! The overturned short table hit the ground with a dull thud. Patriarch Long was so angry that his face was a bit green. He grabbed his son and said angrily, "Crown Princess, what are you doing? You don't understand." The little Crown Princess summoned the Black Feral from her inner world with a whoosh. "Teaching you a lesson." Chapter 27:35. Her eyes were sharp, and her expression was cold. Her gaze toward the Long family did not contain the slightest bit of warmth. It did not seem like she was looking at her cousins at all. It was more like she was looking at her enemies. Mu Jingfeng opened his mouth, but he could not help but shut it. Mu Xingchen hurriedly stood up and walked over. Seeing this, Mu Rochuan hurriedly followed. Her eyes were filled with mockery as she said, "Big brother, did you see that? She's like a lunatic, attacking others just like that." The Long family's Long Chang merely called her cousin. Is there a need for her to flip out like this? Even if she looks down on the Long family, she shouldn't indiscriminately attack others like this. Mu Rochuan sneered. She dares to be so rude in front of His Majesty in the main hall. If this isn't a breach of etiquette, then what is? Don't spout nonsense if you don't know. Mu Xingchen turned around and glared at Mu Rochuan. His Chow wouldn't get angry for no reason. He naturally did not know what these Long family members had done in the past. But now, he knew. As members of the Long family, they actually colluded with outsiders to attack their own family for some benefits. Such people with such low morals and improper conduct actually had the face to claim kinship with the Crown Princess. What was the point of not beating them? Should they be left for the new year? The Long family is extremely shameless, Mu Xingchen said coldly. Beating them up is their honor. Mu Rochuan looked at her elder brother walking in front of her in surprise. She kept thinking in her heart, Big brother has never said such harsh words before. This was all because one was influenced by the company one kept. Being so close to that sarcastic young crown prince consort, her eldest brother had also learned bad things from her. Arbor slammed his ferrule down on Long Chang's head. With his father's help, Long Chang dodged in a sorry state. She frowned and raised her hand to throw out 2 8-trigrams binding talismans. Bind! A circle of light in the shape of the 8 trigrams enveloped Long Chang. Within a few breaths, Long Chang was bound on the spot. The little crown princess expressionlessly released a bow and ordered indifferently, "Break one of his dog legs. Let everyone in the Long family remember not to claim kinship in the future. I'm beautiful and gentle, shut up and get to work." The little crown princess was speechless as she interrupted the mechanical puppet's long-winded praises. She waved her hand and asked it to quickly drag the eyesore Long Chang out. "All right." De Bao raised his head and blocked the Long family members who came forward to stop him with 2 punches. Grabbing the terrified Long Chang, the golem exerted its strength and directly carried Long Chang out of the palace. Everyone was dumbfounded. Long Shoshin was so angry that he extended a finger and pointed at the little crown princess with a trembling finger. Worried about his son's safety, he didn't dare to stay here. He quickly bowed to the great emperor and ran out with the Long family to save Long Chang. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly returned to their seats. The sky outside was already completely dark. This palace banquet had already been held for more than 4 hours. The funny thing was, they didn't even eat much. They were only there to bet and watch the show. The great emperor stared at his son speechlessly. The latter had a baffled expression as he lowered his head to look at himself. He was wearing a black formal suit that was slim-fitting and fitted. There was nothing wrong with it. The great emperor held his breath in his chest. "Look at this bandit wife you married. What did she do to a good banquet?" His son immediately glared back at him. Chapter 2736. Can you blame my wife for this? Can you blame her? Prince Mo glared at his father. Was she the one who wanted to compete in that competition? Was she the one who humiliated the National Security Agency? Was she the one who instigated those ministers to bet on the National Security Agency's victory? Was she the one who deliberately targeted the Long family? Not at all. It was all these people who came up and asked for it. The emperor was so angry that his eyes hurt. He didn't want to look at his son anymore. This brat only knew how to help his wife. He hadn't even reprimanded him. He only glared at him a few times, and he immediately wanted to protect his wife and glare back. He couldn't bear to look at him. The crown prince held his wife's hand and sat peacefully at the side, revealing an innocent expression that said, "What did we do?" The emperor's anger was stuck in his chest. He couldn't scold or let it go. He couldn't help but secretly grind his teeth. "All right, serve the dishes." After so long, not all the dishes were served. It was better to let them eat and scram. The ministers had lost a lot of money and were feeling the pinch in their hearts. When they heard the emperor's words, they all swore in their hearts that they would definitely eat it back. But they had lost so much money. Could they eat it back? Left Prime Minister Chen Chaoji was about to cry. He had invested 10 million spirit coins. His family's income for several years was gone, and he had even thrown in his salary for so many years. The tigress beside him secretly pinched his arms, twisting them until they were bruised. This was still at the palace banquet. The tigress couldn't flare up. When they returned home, there would definitely be chaos for a while. There would be no peace at home. If he had known, he would have learned from the calm Gao Baran. Even if he had invested in the little crown princess, he hadn't invested too much money. Regardless of whether they lost or not, they would still be able to live the rest of their lives, right? It was all his fault. No, it was that madam of the National Security Agency. She said that she was invincible, but in the end, she was useless. In an instant, she was defeated by the crown princess. Chen Chaoji's heart was bleeding. He didn't know how to live the rest of his life. He only felt very lost. Madame Chen, who was beside him, was already pouting. She had been glaring at Chen Chaoji with narrowed eyes. Just now, she had already said not to invest so much, but this man kept comforting her, saying that Mrs. Guo would definitely win. And the result. Madame Chen felt like she was about to go crazy. Her savings for the past few years had all been squandered by this man in one night. Chen Baojia was naturally in a bad mood. Seeing the little crown princess in the limelight, it would be strange if she felt better. Moreover, her parents were quarreling, so she didn't dare to say anything. She could only sit there gloomily. Like the Chen family, there were many officials who had fooled themselves because of their blind trust in the Madam of the National Security Agency. He really couldn't go on living in the future. The Madam of the National Security Agency had tricked all the civil and military officials of the imperial court. Everyone's mood was in turmoil, and they all wanted to cry. On the other hand, Imperial Censor Wang, Imperial Censor Jiang, and the others were beaming with happiness. It was a pity that he had blindly trusted the crown prince. He felt that it was impossible for the black-hearted couple to lose. As expected, ha. The few censors who had made a small profit were very shamelessly happy in their hearts. However, on the surface, they still looked very serious. The emperor coughed and raised his cup first. My son and daughter-in-law have just returned to the capital. In the future, I will need everyone's support. Chapter 2737. Since the emperor had already said so, the various lords and family heads also hurriedly cried silently, expressing that they would definitely get along well with the black-hearted couple. Smiling on the surface, but crying on the inside. This was the truest portrayal of the hearts of the various lords and patrician families. I heard that eldest Miss Mu received an invitation letter from the Imperial Academy. A voice rang out with a laugh. Everyone turned to look at the source of the voice and saw that it was Gu family's family head, Gu Daochang, who had always been on good terms with the Mu family. My son, Gu Yishuan, just happened to receive an invitation letter as well. Why don't he travel together with eldest Miss Mu? Family head Gu said with a smile. Mu Rochuan clearly felt honored that family head Gu had specifically mentioned the invitation letter, and she smiled faintly at family head Gu. Her gaze then turned to the man behind family head Gu, who had a long face and slightly narrowed eyes. She smiled and said Rochuan would be more than happy to travel with Sir Yishuan. Ha. Family head Do also laughed. Our Do family also has 4 juniors who are going to participate in the test. Why don't they all go together? It'll be more lively. Mu Jingfeng's face, which was originally smiling, instantly stiffened. Their Mu family only had 1 Mu Rochuan going to the Imperial Academy, but the Do family actually had 4. He wouldn't know if he didn't compare, but once he did, his heart ached. Then Yongqian, you can go with them. Family head Shi also chimed in. Shi Yongqian promptly shook her head. I'll go with Miss Qin. The Qin family had even more people going than the Do family. When the time came, Qin Wen would definitely go with Sir Omega Kotoku and the rest. Then, she would naturally be in the same team as Sir Omega Kotoku. Shi Yongqian made a small calculation and looked up at Miss Qin with a fawning smile. Qin Wen didn't comment. She didn't care. Who didn't know about Shi Yongqian's little thoughts? The entire capital knew that she wholeheartedly adored her second brother. Everyone cheerfully talked about their juniors going to the Imperial Academy to participate in the test, but they had already forgotten some of the unpleasant matters from before. Suddenly, a discordant voice cut through the joyous laughter of the crowd. It was a bit shrill as it said, "Didn't the Crown Princess also return to the Mu family? Could it be that the Crown Princess did not receive an invitation from the royal school?" Everyone's eyes were focused on Zhongli Mansion's second miss, Zhongli Ji-wei. Was there an end to this? After finally stopping for a few minutes, Miss Zhongli's flames of war were about to burn the Crown Princess again. Everyone felt a headache coming on. From the looks of it, that Crown Princess wasn't someone who was willing to suffer a loss. Why didn't she know her place? Why did she have to poke at others for no reason? The little fatty glanced at Miss Zhongli, put down his chopsticks and snorted, "What's so great about the Royal Academy? Our Jojo doesn't need to go to the academy to study." "That's right, our Jojo doesn't know anything. Why do you insist on going to school to study?" What a joke. Qi Xianxian put down her chopsticks and looked at Miss Zhongli impolitely. "Who are you? Are you looking for trouble?" "Cough, this is Great General Zhongli's second miss, Zhongli Ji-wei." A madam at the side tried to smooth things over and couldn't help but advise, "Miss Zhongli, she is also a straightforward person. She says whatever she thinks. If she has offended the Crown Princess, please forgive her. Let's just eat. Why are there so many problems?" Chapter 2738. Ma Ta poked at the dishes on her plate and glanced indifferently at Miss Zhongli. "What are you showing off for? Do you want to compete with us?" "Ha, I think it's lively enough today. If Miss Zhongli wants to compete, our Seikong Planet Battle team will accept the challenge." All the officials instantly acted in unison and hurriedly reached out their chopsticks to pick up a few dishes and put them into their mouths to chew. Some even picked up their favorite dishes, afraid that they wouldn't be able to eat the dishes if the commotion started again. Mo Lian glanced at them and silently twitched her mouth. Thinking about it, these officials were also quite miserable. Not only did they lose several years' worth of salary in the time it took to eat a meal, they might not even be able to eat a few mouthfuls of food now. Zhongli Ji-wei looked at Qi Xianxian and the others with a dark expression, unable to restrain the anger in her heart. Those people weren't even born and raised in the divine continent, yet they dared to be so impudent in front of her, the miss of General Zhongli's estate. Wasn't it all because the Crown Princess gave them the guts? If it weren't for this Crown Princess obstructing them, with her identity as the second miss of the Zhongli estate, she might have already entered the Crown Prince estate. Why would she still need to endure their attitude here? Thinking of this, Zhongli Ji-wei's expression became even more gloomy. "Ji-wei, why aren't you apologizing to the Crown Princess yet?" A dignified woman beside Zhongli Ji-wei smiled and said, "You're too insensible, child." This woman was General Zhongli's second wife, Zhongli Ji-wei's biological mother, Madame Ma. She stood up and bowed in the direction of the young Crown Princess. Smiling, she said, "Ji-wei has offended you, and I hope that the Crown Princess will forgive her." As for what she offended, Madame Zhongli didn't say. Anyway, everyone was well aware. Wasn't it because second Miss Zhongli's outstanding talent that she received an invitation from the Royal Academy, while the young Crown Princess, as a daughter of the Mu family, didn't receive an invitation? Madame Zhongli wanted to apologize because she was afraid that the young Crown Princess would fly into a rage out of humiliation and vent her anger on her daughter, Ji-wei. Everyone cursed in their hearts and secretly glanced at the little Crown Princess. He couldn't help but be speechless. The Crown Princess's stoic face didn't reveal any emotions. She sat there like a jade carving, watching their performance as if she was watching a clown. That look in her eyes was filled with disdain. It was hard for anyone not to notice it. The great emperor frowned and said coldly, "Enough, let's not talk about other things. I want to make an announcement." Zhongli Ji-wei secretly gritted her teeth. Her heart was filled with doubts. Wasn't it said that the emperor hadn't acknowledged the identity of the little crown princess? Why did it feel like the emperor was protecting this damned crown prince consort in every way? This was really strange. The crown prince and the crown princess have always held their wedding ceremonies in the lower star field. The great emperor looked at his subjects expressionlessly and said, I have decided to hold another wedding for them. Let's set it for today, 3 months from now. Chen Baojia, Zhongli Jiwei, and the other girls felt dizzy and didn't know what was going on. What? The great emperor actually decreed that he would personally hold their wedding ceremony. That means he acknowledged the identity of the crown princess. Chen Baojia almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Her entire person was a little dizzy. Even His Majesty acknowledged the identity of the crown princess. Then, what about her? Chen Baojia was flustered. She really wanted to ask the Madam of the National Security Agency. Chapter 2739. But when she looked up, Minister of State Security was not there. She thought about it carefully. Wasn't Minister of State Security knocked out by the crown princess and carried away? Chen Baojia was anxious, angry, and uncomfortable. She was on the verge of collapse. She was muddle-headed and very uncomfortable. On the other side, Zhongli Jiwei was not much better than her. If she could, she really wanted to stand up and ask His Majesty why he made such a decision. Originally, in the entire Great Divine Province, except for the imperial capital, very few people knew that their crown prince brought the little crown princess back to the capital. If the wedding ceremony was held and announced to the world, then what should she do? What should she do? Madame Zhongli looked worriedly at her daughter sitting beside her. She quickly reached out and held Zhongli Jiwei's hand. She couldn't help but secretly hate the Madam of the National Security Agency who couldn't do anything right. If Madam of State Security had not repeatedly mentioned how good the Crown Prince was and how many benefits there were to enter the Crown Prince's residence, how could her daughter be like this now? She had only seen the Crown Prince a few times, and yet she was so dead set on that man. Mrs. Zhongli was so angry that she gritted her teeth. She had completely forgotten that she had followed Madam of State Security and encouraged her daughter to do everything she could to capture the Crown Prince's heart. Chen Chaoji stood up and bowed. Isn't the wedding ceremony a bit too hasty, Your Majesty? As soon as he said this, everyone immediately realized that the Emperor and the Crown Prince's faces darkened at the same time. They were really in sync. Are you questioning my decision? The Emperor asked coldly. An oppressive aura pressed down on Chen Chaoji. Minister Zhuo's face immediately turned gray. He quickly cupped his hands and said, well, after all, the Elder Council still hasn't said anything. When Minister Zhuo mentioned the Elder Council, the Emperor's face became slightly better. Minister Zhuo Chen Chaoji was slightly relieved. He quickly said, Your Majesty, the Elder Council had decided to let the Crown Prince marry Princess Jing Linyao of the Pangu clan. Princess Jing is brave and smart, and her cultivation level is very high. She is a rare female cultivator who is a level 14 great spiritual master. The more Chen Chaoji spoke, the smoother he became. Princess Jing might have to undergo the 5 spirits reincarnation test in the next few years. Also, the Pangu clan has such a marvelous item. It will not be a problem for Princess Jing to pass the tribulation. That's right, Your Majesty. After all, as everyone knows, female cultivators only have a 1% chance of surviving the 5 spirits reincarnation tribulation. It's rare to see a woman as intelligent and resourceful as Princess Jing. General Zhongli stroked his short black beard and nodded as well, speaking in a matter-of-fact tone. Zhongli Jiwei was quite proud of herself. She looked at the little crown princess provocatively. Without the approval of the Elder Council, even if the Emperor wanted to arrange a marriage between you and the Crown Prince, he would have to consider whether the Elder Council's decision could be approved. Lord State Preceptor, you are experienced and knowledgeable. What do you think? The State Preceptor, who had not spoken since the beginning, was suddenly affected by the flames of war. He was not surprised. He just calmly looked at Qin Chaoji, who had dragged him into the water. The State Preceptor nodded slightly. According to the past practice, the Crown Prince's marriage must be approved by the Elder Council. At least half of the Elder Council's members must approve. Right now, there were 7 elders in the Elder Council. Chapter 2740. Except for the chief elder who is always wandering outside, the other 6 elders are naturally here. Invite them over and make a decision immediately. It's not a big problem. Chen Chaoji said with certainty. Chen Baojia's mood finally improved a little at this time. Thinking of what her father said to her before, she suddenly had a few smiles on her face. The decision of the Council of Elders would definitely not pass. As long as the Council of Elders' decision was not passed, the little Crown Princess would not be able to officially become the Crown Princess of the Divine Land. As for Jing Linyao, before the Crown Prince came back, they had already asked Jing Linyao for her opinion. Jing Linyao did not have the slightest intention to oppose the Crown Prince taking a concubine, and it seemed that she did not care about men at all. This was good. After the marriage in the future, the worse the relationship between Jing Linyao, the Crown Princess, and the Crown Prince, the more opportunities Chen Baojia could take advantage of. It was just that Zhongli Jiwei was very annoying. With the power of the general's mansion, they would definitely arrange for her to marry into the mansion. But Chen Baojia was confident that with Zhongli Jiwei's IQ, she would definitely be left behind a few streets behind. Lord Jojo did not know at all that in the hearts of the people present, there were surging winds and clouds that were surging like a storm. Even if she knew, according to her idea, it was enough to slap her to death with strength. There was no need to talk nonsense. She coldly looked at the people jumping up and down and did not say a word. Mo Luxing was a little angry. He thought that Qin Chaoji was really getting bolder and bolder. Now he was actually using the Council of Elders to suppress him. Did he think that he cared about the existence of the Council of Elders? Looking at the fierce eyes of the great emperor, everyone did not dare to breathe loudly and silently lowered their heads. All the officials, including Qin Chaoji, felt a strong pressure from the great emperor from top to bottom. Everyone felt that the great emperor was not what they thought. The great emperor casually said that he would hold a wedding ceremony for the Crown Prince and Crown Princess. The great emperor was serious. I have made up my mind. The great emperor coldly spat out 4 words. Suddenly, a little eunuch outside the door hurriedly reported 4th elder, 5th elder, 6th elder, and 7th elder request to see your majesty. Good. This Qin Chaoji was indeed bold. He actually had such a trick up his sleeve and was waiting for him here. He didn't know when his courtier had gotten so close to the Elders Guild. At this time, Qin Chaoji was also secretly wiping his sweat and cursing in his heart. He wasn't the one who invited the elders over. Although he had mentioned this to the 4th elder in advance, how could he arrange for all the elders of the Divine Land to suddenly appear here at the same time? Moreover, he didn't know that the great emperor would suddenly mention the wedding banquet tonight. How could he have the time to prepare? Therefore, it must have been arranged by someone else. This person's methods were exceedingly powerful. However, now that this person with extraordinary means was hiding behind the scenes, Qin Chaoji would have to take the blame. Qin Chaoji felt even more uneasy when he saw the great emperor's piercing gaze. He wondered if the great emperor would take this opportunity to remove him from his position. Qin Chaoji's body trembled. He quickly thought that this was impossible. Although the great emperor was violent, he was usually more reasonable. After all, he was the left Prime Minister Qin Chaoji. If the great emperor wanted to remove him from his position, he would have to consider the consequences. Prince Mo coldly curled the corner of his mouth. He held the little girl's little hand and gently squeezed it. Chapter 27:41. The crown prince's fingers were slender, and his palm was dry and warm. The message he conveyed was, "Jojo, don't worry." Jojo didn't care at all. He looked at everyone present coldly as if he was watching a clown show. Of course, she was at ease. She wasn't worried at all about what would happen next. The little guy had blind confidence in Prince Mo. In any case, her husband could settle everything. As they spoke, the 4 green-robed elders entered the hall at the same time and bowed to the great emperor on the throne. "Greetings, your majesty." "Greetings, your majesty." The great emperor nodded slightly with a heavy expression. "Elders, why have you come together?" 4th elder walked out first and said indifferently, "We heard that the great emperor has decided to reorganize the wedding banquet for the crown prince and the Mu family's young lady." The great emperor couldn't help but laugh. These people's sources of information were quite fast. He looked at Qin Chaoji coldly. Qin Chaoji was about to break out in a cold sweat. It was a great injustice. Thinking about it, it was obvious that he couldn't have used a special method to inform the elders. The Elders Guild has passed a resolution. We don't agree with the crown prince marrying Miss Mu. As they spoke, a slightly short elder suddenly jumped out and waved his hand. No, I don't disagree. 5th elder. The 4th elder glared at him in exasperation. 5th elder pursed his lips. Then I don't disagree. 4th elder ignored him and said directly to the great emperor, in short, 6th elder, 7th elder, and I don't agree with the crown prince marrying Miss Mu. What's the use of you not agreeing? Arbor said coldly. His words made everyone's jaws drop. Hey, miss, this is the Elders Guild. Do you have to be so arrogant? You can be considered the first person who dares to speak in such a manner in front of the elders of the Council of Elders. Didn't you see that even the great emperor was quite respectful to the elders? This crown prince has already married the crown princess. Mo Lian said indifferently. I'll marry her even if you don't agree. That's it. The great emperor didn't say anything. He just looked at the elders coldly. Usually, when he was being insulted, he always felt that his lungs were about to explode from anger because of this pair of brats. Now that he saw someone being insulted by the young couple, he felt an inexplicable sense of pleasure. Was it appropriate to rejoice in others' misfortune? The 4th elder's face darkened. He cupped his hands and said to the great emperor, Your Majesty, there have been rules since ancient times. The Council of Elders of the Divine Land has the right to decide on the Crown Prince's wife. This is also for the future development of the Great Divine Land. Mu Jingfeng could not help but ask coldly, Why? Did our Mu family's ladies make you feel wronged? Mu Rochuan couldn't help but be stunned. She looked up at her father. This was the first time she saw her father standing beside the little crown princess and speaking up for her. This is probably for the sake of the family's interests, Mu Rochuan thought. Mu Rochuan wasn't the only one who thought so. The little crown princess herself also thought so. Would Mu Jingfeng be so kind as to help her? Wasn't it because she was the Mu family's daughter now? If she was slapped in the face by the Council of Elders, their Mu family would feel bad about it. Family head Mu, you've misunderstood. Mu Xingchen sneered. Misunderstood? Then why do you keep saying that you don't agree? My sister's marriage isn't up to you to decide. Chapter 27:42. 4th elder glanced at Mu Xingchen with an ugly expression. This matter needs to be considered at length. Whether Miss Mu can become the crown princess of our divine prefecture still needs to be tested by the Council of Elders. Zhongli Jiwei almost laughed out loud. Another test. Being the crown prince's imperial concubine was truly sullen. Her mocking gaze landed on the little crown princess's face. The latter was expressionless as she looked at them coldly. This isn't a test for any Tom, Dick, or Harry. This crown princess has to accept it. The emperor's mouth twitched. He suddenly felt that the little crown princess was somewhat pleasing to the eye. Because he was the brat's father, the crown princess tolerated him and was willing to accept his test. As for others, the little crown princess did not give them any face at all. Crown Prince Mo glanced at his old dad smugly. Now you know how good my wife is, and how much my wife respected you back then, right? Don't make trouble for yourself. You don't know how lucky you are. The emperor was speechless. What's with the look in my son's eyes? Is it appropriate for him to look at me like he's warning me not to make trouble? What a brat. Crown Prince Mo faintly swept him a glance before retracting his gaze. Fourth Elder was so angry that his nose was crooked. This girl actually dared to say that the Council of Elders is a Tom, Dick, or Harry. She really has guts. Even if the 7 elders don't agree, my wife will only be Jojo alone. Mo Lien said coldly. Do you think that you can order me around and do whatever you want with just the few of you? A terrifying aura surged from his body, and a heavy pressure rushed towards the elders. Did he, Mo Lien, need their consent to marry anyone? What a joke. Their opinions were not important to him at all. 7th Elder's face darkened, but he could not help but be pleasantly surprised. The Crown Prince's aura had far surpassed the divine realm. Could it be that he had advanced to Mystique Venerable rank? A Mystique Venerable rank in his early 20s. Was he trying to scare people to death? With such extraordinary potential, how could he find a pitiful 3rd-level spirit realm cultivator as his wife? No, they were not worthy at all. Only someone as stunning as Princess Jing would be a good match for the Crown Prince. Other than the 5th Elder, who had a look of disapproval, the other 3 elders became even more determined. Your Highness, please reconsider. You came here rashly and spouted nonsense. Have you asked for 2nd Elder and 3rd Elder's opinion? Mo Lien sneered. Ever since the Chief Elder disappeared, the entire affairs of the Elders Guild were managed by the 2nd Elder and the 3rd Elder. In other words, these two were the representatives of the Elders' Council. The 4th Elder was taken aback. 2nd Elder and 3rd Elder are still in closed-door training these days. This prince has already informed them. Wait a moment. Prince Mo coldly said. The 4th Elder and the others couldn't help but be stunned again. The 5th Elder hurriedly tried to smooth things over. Aya, let's talk things over. Don't make things so tense, okay? The elders are only thinking of His Highness. And His Highness is also very protective of his wife. Neither side has done anything wrong. Let's talk things over. Let's talk things over. The 4th Elder glared at the coward who had shrunk back at the last moment. Scram. The 5th Elder rubbed his nose. The atmosphere in the hall froze. Zhongli Jiwei, who had wanted to mock the young crown princess, did not dare to say anything. Chapter 2743. His Majesty did not seem to be in a good mood. If she mocked the Crown Prince Consort now, it might coincidentally trigger His Majesty's anger. She didn't want to get into trouble. Moreover, at this time, she could just watch the Elders Guild scold the Crown Princess. She didn't need to stand up for herself. Zhongli Jiwei was proud and looked at Chen Baojia. However, Chen Baojia was a little worried. Her father had offended His Majesty just now. She didn't know if he would be punished later. The whole hall fell into silence. Other than the sound of people drinking and eating, there was no other sound. Flutter flutter, a slight sound of wings flapping came from outside the hall. It was already 10 o'clock in the morning. The banquet had been going on since the evening. Poor people, they hadn't eaten much. Troubles seemed to be coming one after another. Hearing the sound, everyone's hair stood up and they turned to look. Could it be that something else had happened? Suddenly, a mechanical wooden bird flapped its wings and flew in from outside the hall. It glided over everyone's heads with a pure gold invitation letter stamped with a circular seal in its beak. "It's an invitation letter," Mu Rochuan exclaimed. The other young people who had received invitations also couldn't help but exclaim. Why was the invitation letter sent to the palace? Was it to invite the Crown Prince? Everyone's gazes all turned towards Crown Prince Mo. Some were in admiration, some were in awe, but even more were full of reverence. The Crown Prince of the Divine Province was extraordinary. He had just returned and he had already received an invitation letter from the royal school. The Crown Prince suddenly turned his head and looked at his little wife. He had a feeling that there was a 99% chance that this invitation was directed at his Jojo. The mechanical wooden bird flapped its wings and accurately flew to the table in front of the Crown Prince. With a puff, it spat out the 8 invitation letters in its mouth in front of the Crown Prince. Then, its mouth opened and closed, and a magnetic male voice came out. "Hello, I'm the principal of the royal school, Yun Piaomiao. Arbor, Qi Xian Xian, Duan Mu Qing, Ko Hongwen, Ma Ta, Lu Yu, Jiang Shaoxin, Hua Tao. Congratulations to these 8 students. Welcome to the royal school's entrance exam this spring. Please bring this invitation letter to the Wind Thunder City on the 15th of March of this year. At that time, someone will guide you on how to take the test." Everyone was dumbfounded. Qi Xianxian and the others also stood up in a daze and looked suspiciously at the mechanical wooden bird squatting in front of Arbor. What happened? Why were they suddenly asked to participate in the entrance exam? They weren't even familiar with the royal school. Everyone present was extremely shocked. This was because the royal school did not recruit students every year. They would only recruit once every few years, and the students they recruited were all top-notch talents in their respective fields. Moreover, the proportion of female students that were recruited was very small. What was going on now? All of a sudden, he recruited the entire Seekong Planet battle team and even recruited 2 girls in a row. Although there was a possibility of failing the entrance test, generally speaking, the probability of failing was extremely low. Generally, if one could get an invitation letter, it was basically a done deal to get into the school. Look, why is that invitation letter golden? Yeah, my mechanical wooden bird is Director Chi Duo's voice. Why is this Principal Yun? Chapter 2744. Could it be that Principal Yun personally invited the Crown Princess and the rest to join the Seekong Star battle team? How was that possible? Zhongli Jiwei's expression was practically distorted as she glared at the little Crown Princess and the rest in disbelief. She didn't believe it. No matter what, she didn't dare to believe that Principal Yun would actually personally invite the little Crown Princess to participate in the entrance test. On the side, Chen Baojia was also so angry that her lungs were about to hurt. Her charming eyes darkened as she looked at Arbor. No matter how angry she was inside, she still revealed the most appropriate sweet smile on her face. "Congratulations, Crown Princess." Chen Baojia revealed a pleasing expression and said with a smile, "We were just saying that the Crown Princess didn't receive an invitation, but she's here now." Mu Jingfeng also felt his face glowing, and he couldn't help but laugh out loud. And it's even an invitation personally sent by Principal Yun. He emphasized again, intending to remind the various family heads that his daughter couldn't be mentioned in the same breath as other families' children. The difference in the invitation was like heaven and earth. Unexpectedly, it attracted family head Do's sneer. Family head Mu, are you misunderstanding something? Principal Yun invited the Arbor students, not your Mu family. Mu Jingfeng instantly felt unwell. When family head Do brought up the matter that he had deliberately ignored earlier, if this wasn't a slap in the face, then what was? The emperor was in a good mood and nodded. Since the crown princess also received an invitation, then go with the crown prince when the time comes. Your brother Zheng is also in the academy, so he can also give guidance when the time comes. Second elder and third elder seek an audience. Invite them in. The emperor paused and glanced at his son. Could it be that second elder and third elder were already standing on the little crown princess side? If not, why would his son make such an arrangement? The emperor felt that he had discovered the truth. He looked at the two elders who walked into the main hall and revealed a smile as if he was looking at an ally. It's been hard on the two elders to specially come out of seclusion to uphold justice for my son. It's what we should do. The two elders were dressed in black robes. One of them was slightly thin and had a brandy nose. He was in high spirits and his eyes were bright. The other person was short and chubby. He wore a minister's hat on his head. When he walked to the center of the hall, he looked at Arbor and blinked. Jojo was expressionless. Arbor had seen these two old men when he was in Shuntian Prefecture, so he naturally knew them. That old man with rosacea was an alcoholic and had even robbed her of her winter fruit wine. Later, when the Jing family of the Pangu clan sent people to hunt her down, the old man even tried to clean up the mess for them. Although it was the emperor's idea, it was also the old man's fault. For the sake of the crimson nimbus boat that he had given him, Jojo decided to look down on him a little less. The fat old man had snatched a pot of porridge from her. He was simply a glutton. When fourth elder saw that his two old brothers had also come, he couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. He asked embarrassedly, second elder, third elder, why did you suddenly come out of seclusion? If you don't come out of seclusion, are you going to overturn the heavens? Second elder scolded fourth elder, his brandy nose trembling slightly in the air. Fine. He had to regain the good impression of him in front of the little girl. For this reason, he had to fiercely make his presence known before third elder. Fourth elder looked at his brother with a dumbfounded expression. He didn't understand who he had offended and why he was suddenly being scolded. These 2 days were extremely busy. If there wasn't enough time to add 2 chapters, then let's add one. Chapter 2745. If you don't understand the situation, don't blindly meddle in the young couple's marriage. Second elder said unhappily, moreover, didn't you all see it just now? The principal of the royal school directly sent an invitation to the young crown princess. Besides the crown princess, who else would have such an honor? Second elder glared at fourth elder and the others with a look of disappointment and said casually, all right, let's start the voting again. Those who agree with the crown prince marrying Miss Jiao, raise your hand. Second elder and third elder raised their hands at the same time. When they saw the 4 people's dumbfounded expressions, they immediately stepped forward and kicked fifth elder, lifting his arm. Everyone, if they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have dared to believe it. They thought that the Elders' Council's decision-making process was prudent and meticulous, but it was actually so sloppy and hilarious. It really blinded everyone's dog eyes. Fifth Elder also felt like he had been fucked. He had always liked to smooth things over and maintain a neutral position, but now he was forcefully dragged onto the pirate ship by Second Elder. If Fourth Elder's piercing gaze could stab him, he would have died countless times by now. Sigh, just thinking about it made him feel incomparably depressed. How did this become his fault? Was this his fault? Fourth elder was extremely angry. When second elder and the other two lowered their arms, he also shouted, "Those who disagree with the crown prince marrying Miss Xiao, raise your hand." Fourth elder, sixth elder, and seventh elder raised their 3 claws at the same time. Fourth elder's pair of bull-like eyes were still staring at second elder with disdain. Second elder, third elder, just because Principal Yun of the royal school sent an invitation to Miss Xiao doesn't mean that she has the right to become the honorable crown princess. This old man still stands by my words. If Miss Xiao wants to become the crown princess, she still has to go through a strict examination. Zhongli Jiwei silently gave fourth elder 18 thumbs up. In her heart, she naturally felt that fourth elder's words were very reasonable. Who said that receiving an invitation meant everything? Perhaps this Xiao Mu had merely run into a stroke of dumb luck. Second elder looked at fourth elder and the other two as if they were fools. He said angrily, "You 3 old things, don't cause trouble all day long." Fourth elder had an aggrieved expression on his face as if he was saying, "Second brother, how dare you scold us like that?" He glared at second elder and said, "Second brother, although the matters of the Elders Guild are usually handled by you and third brother. But we also have the right to make decisions." "That's right. That's right." Elder 6 and Elder 7 nodded along with Elder 4, "We also have the right to make decisions." "Second brother, third brother, you can't be so obstinate and opinionated." "That's right, that's right." He even dragged old fifth onto the pirate ship. "What you're doing is irresponsible to the crown prince." The 6 elders rolled up their sleeves and were about to fight in the main hall. The great emperor's eyelids twitched, and he hurriedly said, "Everyone, calm down." The old man with rosacea took a deep breath and stared at fourth elder with bright eyes. He said with a sincere expression, "Fourth brother, I'm doing this for your own good. Damn it, don't make trouble for yourself. If you get into trouble, no one can save you. You just have to bite the hand of a young couple. What's the point of doing that? Right now, it's a 3-on-3 decision." Fourth elder said with a dark expression. "I still stand by my words. Miss Xiao must accept the examination." Chapter 2746. The old man with rosacea was so angry that his beard blew and his eyes widened. This old fourth was more stubborn than a bull. What if he wanted to beat him up? "State Preceptor, what do you think?" Sixth elder suddenly turned his head and looked at the State Preceptor, who was silent at the side. "Now that the Elders Guild is in a tie of 3 against 3, I wonder if State Preceptor has any good suggestions." Fourth elder's eyes lit up slightly, and he nodded with a serious face. "That's right. State Preceptor, you are experienced and knowledgeable, so you can give us some suggestions." State Preceptor. Why did this fire burn him again? Why not just let him quietly drink by the side? State Preceptor coughed lightly and looked up with a faint smile. "I can't interfere too much with the Elders Guild's matters. The best way is to wait for your Grand Elder Kong Yin to come back." Everyone couldn't help but look at each other. "State Preceptor, you are not joking, right? How long would it take for Grand Elder Kong Yin to come back and preside over this matter?" Everyone knew that Great Elder Kong Yin had disappeared for who knows how many years. No one knew where she had gone to travel. State Preceptor nodded and said, "Of course. In the end, the Elders Guild's matters should be settled by the Chief Grand Elder himself. Isn't this reasonable? What you said made sense." Everyone nodded silently and looked at each other. "Then this matter, are we just going to drag it out like this?" Fourth elder looked at the State Preceptor with a troubled expression. State Preceptor's words were not without reason. Indeed, the Elders Guild's decisions must be passed through the Grand Elder. But now, waiting for Grand Elder Kong Yin to come back and make a decision felt more difficult than directly testing the little girl. Could it be that as long as Grand Elder Kong Yin didn't come back, the Elders Guild couldn't make a decision and admit the little girl's identity as the Crown Princess? Chen Baojia, Zhongli Jiwei, and the others who attended the meeting almost laughed out loud in their hearts. After all this, the little Crown Princess was even more unlucky. Now they had to wait for Grand Elder Kong Yin to come back and confirm her identity. Ha ha ha. How long would they have to wait? He might as well accept the fourth Elder's decision and pass the Elders Guild's decision. Who asked her to do it? Who asked her to look down on the people from the Elders Guild? Who asked her to say, not just any Tom, Dick or Harry can test me? Ha ha ha, now it's going to be smooth, right? Just wait for Great Elder Kong Yin. Perhaps, he might be able to meet the Chief Grand Elder in his lifetime. The smile on the corner of Zhongli Jiwei's mouth was almost unconcealable. They were all mocking and snickering at Miss Chiao. Arbor raised his head and carefully sized up the State Preceptor with a faint smile on his face. Although this guy's face was full of indifference, and a faint smile hung at the corner of his mouth, it still made people feel that something was wrong. The words of the State Preceptor sounded fair and public, as if there was no problem at all. But in the end, it was not good for Jojo. It didn't seem like he was targeting Jojo, but he also couldn't feel that this State Preceptor had any good intentions towards Jojo. While Arbor was sizing up the State Preceptor even turned his face and smiled like an expert, holy and gentle, generously allowing him to size him up. How strange. Arbor unhappily retracted his gaze. There seemed to be a flash of light in his mind, but he couldn't catch it in time. Mo Luxing said with a sullen face, I have decided to reorganize the wedding banquet. Your Majesty, please reconsider. Chapter 2747. Fourth Elder and the other two clasped their hands together and said, Your Majesty, the ancestral rules cannot be violated. We still have to wait for our Grand Elder Kong Yin to come back to confirm his identity. Yes, let's wait for Grand Elder. The courtiers looked at each other and felt that today's matter would not be settled peacefully. The little Crown Princess and His Highness the Crown Prince were not to be trifled with. The Council of Elders was making all sorts of excuses, and actually pushed the decision to Great Elder Kong Yin, who was traveling and not returning. How could they endure this? What decision do you have to wait for me? Suddenly, a deep voice came from outside the hall, accompanied by a burst of comfortable laughter. I didn't expect that the Council of Elders would still respect me so much even though I have been traveling for so many years. Once there is a decision, you still have to wait for me to make the decision. Great. Ha 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 ha. The corners of everyone's mouths twitched and they looked at each other blankly. The same voice roared in their hearts, it can't be. It can't be so coincidental. Everyone is here, and a ghost is here. Great Elder Kong Yin really appeared. Looking at Fourth Elder, Fifth Elder, Sixth Elder and the rest, they all had confused expressions and turned to look at the entrance of the hall. An old man in his 60s wearing a gray monk robe strode in from outside the door. His bald head was comparable to 3,000 lights, so bright that it almost blinded everyone's eyes. Oh my God! Was this really Grand Elder Kong Yin? It was just that he had changed into a strange appearance, causing everyone to reveal a surprised expression. Greetings to Grand Elder Kong Yin. The old man with rosacea was the first to recover from his shock and did not dare to be rash at all. He hurriedly bowed and bowed. As soon as he moved, the third elder, fourth elder, and the others behind him also moved in unison, bowing in unison. Greetings, Great Elder Kong Yin. Ha 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 ha, good. Grand Elder Kong Yin stroked his beard and chuckled. I didn't expect that after traveling for so many years and not caring about worldly affairs, all of you would still respect me so much. Good. Not bad. Everyone, big brother, are you joking? No one can see through your cultivation. Who would dare to disrespect you? Are you courting death? The corner of the old man's mouth twitched as he coughed lightly. Great Elder, you must have traveled far and wide when you're outside. You must have seen a lot. It's good that you're back. Now that you're back, we can continue to listen to your teachings and preside over important matters. Ha 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 ha. Great Elder Kong Yin laughed out loud and nodded. Second brother, you and third brother have worked hard all these years. It's no trouble at all. The old man with rosacea hurriedly cupped his hands in greeting and took a step back. He then used his elbow to poke the fat third elder who was standing still beside him. Third elder hurriedly cupped his hands and said, Great Elder, you've returned at the right time. Coincidentally, the Elder Council has some matters to attend to and needs the Grand Elder to make a decision. Now, all 7 members of the Elders Guild were present. Just now, it was a 3-3 decision. Now, as long as the Great Elder raised his hand, the matter would be settled immediately. However, according to the Great Elder's unreliable character in the past, the old man with rosacea turned to look at the little Crown Princess worriedly. He saw that the little Crown Princess was staring fixedly at her big brother. Her gaze was fixed on Grand Elder Kong Yin, and there was a strange look in her eyes, as if... You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.